Chapter 143. You. Mu Xingqiu was so angry that he couldn't even speak. He subconsciously looked at Gao Tuesday. When he saw that Gao Tu's eyes were still closed and he didn't care about their dispute, his heart slowly sank into despair. Yun Luofeng, Mu Wushuang suppressed the jealousy in her heart and stared coldly at Yun Luofeng. Her beautiful eyes flashed fiercely. I, Mu Wushuang, am willing to concede defeat. I promise you that I will go to the city gates tomorrow, but I hope you won't regret what happened today. In this Long Yuan country, without the protection of the royal family, she would never be able to fight against the Yun family. The reason for this was none other than the existence of Yun Luo in the Yun family. As long as Yun Luo didn't die, she would never be able to destroy this slut, Yun Luofeng. Now, whenever she thought of Yun Luofeng's medical skills, Mu Wushuang felt as if a claw was fiercely scratching her heart. It was extremely uncomfortable. If she didn't get rid of him, she would never be at ease for the rest of her life. All right, I'll be waiting for you at the city gates tomorrow. After Yun Luofeng had finished speaking, she stretched lazily. She moved her shoulders and curled the corners of her lips seductively. Yun Xiao, let's go home. After saying this, she slowly turned around and walked out of the main hall. The afterglow of the setting sun poured down and fell on the girl's snow-white dress. It was so beautiful that it could take one's breath away. Yun Xiao was like a loyal bodyguard, following by Yun Luofeng's side from the very beginning. The man's face was always expressionless, so grim that it was as if nothing could move him. Hee, Elder Ning laughed and looked meaningfully at the backs of the two young men as they left. He then said meaningfully, I'm very curious, where did the Yun girl get her luck to pick up such a man? General Yun, this time your Yun family is really lucky, ah. After laughing twice, he walked out of the main hall, leaving behind a dumbfounded Yun Luo. Ever since the incident in the main hall spread, Yun Luofeng's name suddenly spread throughout the entire Long Yuan country. To describe it in 4 words, she became famous as a doctor. Those who had previously mocked and ridiculed her immediately changed their attitudes and wished that they could kneel down and lick her boots. So what if Yun Luofeng couldn't cultivate? She was a miracle doctor. With the reputation of being a divine doctor, it was unknown how many experts were willing to protect her. She could basically travel unimpeded on the continent. Even though Yun Luofeng had saved Elder Ning by the Qin River that day, many people still held a skeptical attitude. But now, so many officials from the imperial palace had gone to General Yun's residence to curry favor with him. One could imagine the shock that Yun Luofeng brought to them. At this moment, Mu Xingqiu and Mu Wushuang of the Prime Minister's residence were standing at the entrance of the imperial city with embarrassed expressions on their faces. Behind them, a group of guards stood as still as a mountain, giving them nowhere to escape. They could only accept the astonished and shocked gazes of the people around them. Everyone. Yun Luofeng swept her gaze across the 2 people who were standing in a sorry state. She then turned her gaze towards the crowd of onlookers. Her beautiful face was filled with arrogance and coldness. I believe that all of you know what happened to the general's residence 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Hearing this sensitive number, the crowd started to whisper among themselves. Their astonished gazes occasionally glanced at Mu Xingqiu and his grandson. 10 years ago, my parents led the army to war. However, because Prime Minister Mu Xingqiu was greedy for women, they fell into the enemy's trap. This resulted in the leak of intelligence and caused my parents to die on the battlefield. Yun Luofeng's brows showed a deep sense of pain. Her voice also became increasingly sharp. But Mu Xingqiu, that old thief, refused to repent no matter what. Not only did he not admit to his mistakes, he even believed that my parents had committed evil deeds and that this was their fate. Chapter 144. The young lady's words were sharp, causing Mu Xingqiu to lower his head, almost burying it in the dust. What happened 10 years ago was not unfamiliar to the people of Long Yuan country. However, due to the influence of the Prime Minister's office, no one dared to speak up for the Prime Minister's office. What do you mean by doing evil and being fated to be like this? Yun Luofeng laughed. Her laughter was filled with arrogance and rang out once again at the city gate. I only know that good people do not live long, while evil people live for 1,000 years. My parents were killed by that old bastard Mu Xingqiu. Who knew that he would not feel any remorse after killing my parents? Hence, today, I will make Mu Xingqiu confess all the evil deeds he has done over the years, to avenge my parents. Good. Someone in the crowd started clapping, and the others followed suit. At this moment, everyone's emotions were stirred up. Major General Yun is young and talented, and the young madam is valiant and heroic. They are both heroes in our hearts. I don't believe that such heroes would lose their lives on the battlefield because of their evil deeds. They were killed by Mu Xingqiu in order to protect the country. That's right. So many heroes have died on the battlefield. Could it be that their lives were taken because of their evil deeds? I have an uncle who lost his life on the battlefield, but he was a good man. I don't believe that the heavens can take in evil people. If the heavens had eyes, there wouldn't have been so many wars. Looking at the angry crowd, Yun Luofeng raised the corner of her lips slightly. Of course, she recognized the person who led the applause. That person was obviously the odd job worker of the medical pavilion. Needless to say, this person must have been sent by Elder Rong. Miss Yun, we should make them kneel down and apologize to Major General Yun. Yes, we must make them apologize. If they don't, they should pay with their lives for Major General Yun and the young madam. The reaction of the crowd was very intense. At this moment, they had thrown away all their misgivings. Some of them even spat at Mu Xingqiu, who was in a sorry state. Of course, Yun Luofeng also understood that it was precisely because these people had seen Mu Xingqiu's sorry state that they dared to step forward. If they were to face the high-spirited Prime Minister Mu, it was likely that they would not even dare to say a single word. Don't worry, Yun Luofeng raised his hand and silenced the angry voices of the crowd. I've asked them to come here now because the medical pavilion has investigated the crimes that the Mu family has committed over the years. Once this matter is over, I will make them personally go to my parents' grave and apologize. Actually, these things were all investigated by Elder Ning. However, the people did not know Elder Ning's identity. Therefore, Yun Luofeng brought up the medical pavilion. With the reputation of the medical pavilion, no one would doubt the truth of the matter. Mu Xingqiu's expression was very ugly, especially when someone had spat on him when he wasn't paying attention. The spit even had a disgusting stench that made people want to vomit. Mu Xingqiu, Yun Luofeng turned around and looked at Mu Xingqiu. Take out your book of crimes and report all the crimes that you have committed over the years. If there is even one missing, I will cut off one of your arms. Mu Xingqiu's body shivered violently. His hand trembled gently and he almost dropped the book of crimes in his hand. Chapter 145. I, Mu Xingqiu, have committed many mistakes over the years. Mu Xingqiu's voice trembled. What I regret the most is my lust for beauty, causing Major General Yun and young madam to die on the battlefield. I can never make up for this mistake. Mu Xingqiu's face became more and more unsightly. The hand that was holding the book trembled more and more, and his eyes were full of despair. Secondly, when I was young, I had an affair with my sister-in-law and was accidentally discovered by my brother. In order not to spread this matter, I poisoned and murdered my brother. I told the public that he had contracted an illness and died. Wow! The crowd was in an uproar. No matter how they thought about it, Mu Xingqiu not only had an affair with his sister-in-law, but also murdered his own brother. Why didn't God punish such a person who was worse than an animal? Just as Yun Luofeng had said, good people don't live long, but scourges last for thousands of years. Compared to Major General Yun, who served the country and the people, Mu Xingqiu was the one who was truly guilty. Thirdly, because my father and mother suspected the cause of my brother's death, I was afraid that they wouldn't forgive me if they knew, so I acted first and killed them. To the public, I said that my father and mother couldn't bear the death of my brother, so they hanged themselves. The crowd was once again shocked by Mu Xingqiu's words. They thought that Mu Xingqiu was cruel enough to have an affair with his sister-in-law and brother, but they didn't expect that he would even kill his own parents. How could such a person still be alive in this world? The heavens are really blind. Next, every time Mu Xingqiu reported his crimes, the shock in the hearts of the crowd deepened. This Mu Xingqiu killed his brother and father, had an affair with his sister-in-law, and committed all sorts of crimes. There wasn't a single thing he hadn't done. It could be said that he had committed all the crimes that could be committed. Not a single one was left out. Mu Xingqiu's face turned from livid to pale, and in the end, it was as pale as a dead man's face. Until even he himself became numb, like a machine, he only knew how to read according to the book, not missing a single word. After he had reported more than 100 crimes one by one, the entire street in front of the city gate became quiet. It was so quiet that even the sound of the breeze could be heard clearly. Mu Wuxuang, it's your turn. Yun Luofeng turned her head to look at Mu Wuxuang. The corners of her lips curled up into a demonic smile. Do you plan on confessing your crimes yourself, or do you want me to help you? The help she was talking about was, of course, brute force. If Mu Wuxuang insists on not confessing, she doesn't mind using brute force to make him accept. Mu Wuxuang's face turned deathly pale in an instant. He bit his lip and silently looked at Yun Luofeng. Mu Wuxuang. Did Mu Wuxuang also make mistakes? This was impossible. Mu Xingqiu had indeed committed many evil deeds, but what did this have to do with Mu Wuxuang? Mu Wuxuang is elegant and kind, it's impossible for him to do evil things. Tisk tsk, haven't you heard of the saying, you may know a person's face but not his heart? The medical pavilion has great prestige in the mainland. Since this matter was investigated by them, it cannot be false. After Yun Luofeng's words rang out, the quiet city gate became lively once again. The crowd whispered to each other, and their eyes revealed astonishment. Mu Xingqiu, with the exception of Mu Wuxuang, was not a good person. Everyone knew that Mu Xingqiu was shameless and lustful. For the sake of beauty, he leaked information and dragged down Major General Yun and his wife. Mu Wuchen, the eldest young master of the Mu clan, was indifferent, arrogant, cruel and merciless. He did not put the world in his eyes at all. The second young master, Mu Shen, was a legitimate playboy. He often led a group of people out to cause trouble. Last time, he was severely beaten up by the Yun clan's guards who were protecting Yun Luofeng. Only Mu Wuxuang, who was elegant and kind, had not done any evil deeds. How could the world believe that he also had a book of crimes? Chapter 146. At the noisy gate of the city, after the crowd's discussion, Mu Wuxuang clenched the confession book in his hand, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Today's humiliation, one day, I will return it to Yun Luofeng. Thinking of this, Mu Wuxuang suppressed the anger in his heart and opened the book in his hand. I, Mu Wuxuang, have committed heinous crimes and have killed countless people. Killed countless people. Boom! Mu Wuxuang's words were like a sudden clap of thunder. Everyone's hearts were fiercely shaken. They stared dumbfoundedly at the pale-faced Mu Wuxuang. For a moment, they even suspected that there was something wrong with their ears. Facing the astonished gazes of the crowd, Mu Wuxuang kept his head down. His hand that was holding the book trembled slightly, not only did I secretly send a message to the Crown Prince half a year ago, asking him to find a man to frame Yun Luofeng on the streets for molesting a beautiful man, causing Yun Luofeng's reputation to go down the drain. I also secretly executed some of the women who pestered the Crown Prince in Long Yuan country and pushed the blame on others. I was the one who spread Yun Luofeng's reputation of having big breasts and no brains, and being a lecherous love-struck fool. My goal was to make her break off the engagement with the Crown Prince so that I could become the Crown Princess of Long Yuan country, and 10 years ago, I was also the one who made my master ignore Yun Qingya of the Yun family. Most importantly, I have a half-sister, and once, I accidentally discovered that she was infatuated with the Crown Prince, so my sister also died in my hands. The people of Long Yuan country did remember that there was a second miss in the Prime Minister's mansion. This second miss was not as intelligent as Mu Wushuang, nor was she a direct descendant of the Crown Prince. She was born of a concubine, so not many people cared about her death. But what they didn't expect was that the second miss of the Prime Minister's mansion was actually killed by Mu Wushuang. This, everyone was shocked. If Mu Xingqiu's actions made them sigh endlessly, then Mu Wushuang's actions made them unable to believe it. No one could believe that this elegant and dignified first miss of the Prime Minister's mansion was actually someone who killed her own sister. Yun Luofeng smiled faintly. She glanced at the crowd and saw a deathly pale face among the crowd. In the crowd, Mu Xin took 2 steps back. His pale face was full of anger as he glared at Mu Wushuang. So she was the one who killed Shui. She killed my little sister, Murong Shui, for the sake of the Crown Prince. Mu Xin's heart was filled with hatred. A raging fire burned in his heart. The people of Long Yuan nation seemed to have forgotten that the second miss of the Prime Minister's mansion and Mu Xin were both born from the same mother. Now that he heard such explosive news, how could he not feel hatred in his heart? The people nearby could even hear the sound of Mu Xin grinding his teeth. You killed your sister. I wonder if Mu Xingqiu knows about this. Yun Luofeng's lips curved into a faint smile. His demonic gaze gradually swept towards the ashen-faced Mu Xingqiu as he asked. Mu Wushuang's face was also deathly pale. She glanced at Mu Xingqiu, gritted her teeth and said, "My grandfather, he knows. Murong Shui is only the daughter of a concubine. I'm the daughter of the legal wife. Do you think that my grandfather would be biased towards a daughter of a concubine?" Hearing Mu Wushuang's words, Yun Luofeng gently narrowed her eyes. An evil glint flashed across her dark pupils. The two of you are really worthy of being called grandfather and granddaughter. One stole from his sister-in-law and killed his brother, the other didn't even spare his own sister. Indeed, even animals have become a family. Chapter 147. Mu Wushuang's heart completely collapsed. She glared fiercely at Yun Luofeng. Her originally elegant and dignified face now looked extremely sinister. Yun Luofeng, you will pay for what you've done to me today. Yun Luofeng smiled evilly as he leaned lazily against the grim man behind him. He then glanced sideways at the ashen-faced Mu Wushuang and said, "In this world, only I, Yun Luofeng, can scheme against others. No one has ever been able to scheme against me. I'll be waiting for you to come and settle the score with me." As soon as she finished speaking, her face turned solemn and she ordered with a sneer, "Yun Shao, tie these two up and send them to my parents' grave. My old man has been waiting there for a long time." "All right." The man's grim eyes retracted from the beautiful girl's body and stared expressionlessly at Mu Xingqiu and Mu Wushuang. A cold murderous intent flashed across his deep, black eyes. "Stop, what are you doing? I'm a minister of the imperial court and you're just a little guard, you." Mu Xingqiu was frightened by the man's imposing manner. He felt that this man not only wants to tie him up but also wants to kill him. Fear rose in his heart and he involuntarily took a step back. However, Before he could turn around and escape, he was picked up by the man like a chicken. His face immediately turned pale with fright. "Let's go." Yun Luofeng looked at the two people in Yun Zhao's hands and yawned lazily. He then turned around and walked towards the city gate. After the figures of these people had disappeared, the crowd at the city gate once again burst into a clamor of discussion. Sure enough, one may know a person's face but not their heart. I never thought that the elegant and dignified eldest lady of the Mu family would be such a person. Her sister was only infatuated with the crown prince and had no intention of getting the crown prince. In the end, she actually killed her sister. Didn't you hear what she said just now? Previously, Yun Luofeng of the Yun family had molested a handsome man in the street. TSK, I really didn't expect Mu Wuxuan to be such a person. I reckon that when this matter spreads out, the crown prince will no longer want her. That's right, a scheming bitch like Mu Wuxuan is not worthy of being the mother of the nation. Outside the city, surrounded by pine trees, two mausoleums stood quietly at the top of the mountain. On top of the mausoleum, the tombstones carved with cinnabar were very eye-catching, as if they had been painted with fresh blood. The white-haired old man crawled on the ground. His trembling fingers gently stroked the words on the tombstone. His eyes revealed a deep pain. It was a pity that young General Yun Yang, a young and talented man, had been buried in the battlefield. Young Mistress Bai Ling, a heroine among women, had risked her life for the country with Major General Yun and had been buried in the battlefield with him. Feng your parents' wish when they were alive was to be buried here together after they died. They wanted to be far away from the noise of the world and ignore the smoke of war in the world. Now, it can be said that their wish has been fulfilled. In this forest, no one can disturb them. Yun Luo closed his eyes slightly. Until now, he could still recall the war report he had received from the front line more than a decade ago. It said that Yun Yang and his wife had died on the battlefield, and the heart-wrenching pain they had felt. Before the pain in his heart could subside, he had to fight in place of his son to protect this land and its people. But in the end, what did he get in return? He couldn't avenge his eldest son and daughter-in-law, and his youngest son was also plotted against, living in a secret chamber without any light. As for him, he had left his granddaughter to go to the border for 10 years, but he had never been able to compete with imperial concubine Mu's pillow talk in the emperor's ear. Chapter 148. How could such a lecherous and incapable ruler be worthy of his loyalty? Yun Luofeng slowly walked towards the tombstone and stared at the carvings on the tombstone with her dark eyes. She seemed to be reminded of the respectable couple on the battlefield. "Father, mother, I've come to see you." She was not the real Yun Luofeng. She was only borrowing the power of this body to continue living. However, it was because she had merged with this body that her feelings had gradually shifted towards the original body. "Don't worry, I will avenge you sooner or later. Whether it's the Prime Minister's mansion, the muddle-headed and tyrannical dog of an emperor, or the person who had truly killed you, I will avenge them all." The young girl's words caused a sense of relief to appear in Master Dongfang's eyes. He then turned towards Mu Xingqiu and his grandson, who had been escorted to the tombstone. His elderly features instantly sank. "Mu Xingqiu, you old thief, I never thought that this day would come for you." "Ha ha ha." Yun Luo burst into laughter. His smile was refreshed and his eyes were filled with malevolence. "Get out of here. You." Mu Xingqiu was enraged. Just as he was about to retort against the old man, a heavy kick landed fiercely on the back of his knees. Caught off guard, he knelt heavily on the ground. Humiliation. This was a great humiliation. Mu Xingqiu's head was pressed against the ground. He could not help but clench his fists tightly. His eyes were filled with humiliation and anger. Ever since he had risen to power, he had never suffered such humiliation. He would remember this debt. One day, he would make everyone in the general's mansion kneel before him and beg for mercy. Linger, can your spirits in heaven see this? Yun Luo raised his head towards the sky and roared in delight. That year, this dog had leaked information and caused your deaths. However, the emperor had forgotten your contributions and chosen to side with this dog. Now, I'll make them kneel and kowtow 1,000 times in front of you. I hope that your souls can rest in peace. As he spoke, a stream of muddy tears rolled down the old man's face. How many years has it been? How many years had he waited for this day? He would never forget that year, when he went to complain to His Majesty. His Majesty only said one sentence: since it has already happened, it is useless to pursue it. Moreover, Minister Mu did not do it on purpose. How about this? Let him apologize to you. The dead cannot come back to life, so please restrain your grief. Apologize. He had caused the deaths of his son and daughter-in-law. How could a simple apology be enough? Therefore, in his rage, he summoned all the soldiers at the border and razed Mu Xingqiu's mansion to the ground. From then on, he didn't want to interfere with the country's war, but when he heard that the people at the border were living in dire straits, he had no choice but to take command and lead the troops into battle. Grandfather, Yun Luofeng looked at the old man who could no longer control his emotions and quickly stepped forward to support his body. His brows furrowed as he said, "It's getting late, I'll take you back to rest. After this, I'll get Yun Shao to supervise them as they kowtow 1,000 times. Very well." Yun Luofeng closed his eyes slightly. Although he had waited a long time for this scene today, his heart still felt like it was being crushed by a huge rock, suffocating him. If he could, he wished that he had never been a general. That way, Yun Yang and his wife would not have died on the battlefield. As they walked out of the pine forest, Yun Luofeng slowly came to a halt. His dark eyes stared at the old man beside him and asked, "Grandfather, do you blame me for not taking Mu Xingqiu's life directly?" Chapter 149. Yun Luo shook his head slightly and sighed. "I know you must have your reasons for not killing them. Grandfather will not ask. This girl, no matter what she did, he was at ease. Grandfather, have you ever wondered why the dog emperor is so biased towards the prime minister's residence?" Yun Luofeng stroked his chin, a trace of deep thought in his eyes. "Prime Minister Mu leaked military intelligence, causing my parents to die in battle. It is reasonable to say that Prime Minister Mu's behavior is already a crime of treason. Even if the dog emperor likes imperial concubine Mu, there is no reason to protect him." Yun Luo was stunned. He turned to look at Yun Luofeng in astonishment, his eyes clearly filled with doubt. "I really haven't considered this matter. Indeed, Mu Xingqiu's crime was treason, but not only did he not punish Prime Minister Mu, he even sided with him. Was it really because the emperor doted on imperial consort Mu?" Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. "Also, I helped eunuch Lin regain his manly features. If it was an ordinary emperor, he would rather believe in my abilities than announce that eunuch Lin escaped the punishment of castration. In the imperial harem, what does it mean to have a man who has not been castrated? It means that he is a cuckold. Would the emperor be so stupid as to let himself wear a cuckold? Anyone could understand the significance of a man who had not been castrated remaining in the imperial harem as a eunuch. So, even if Gao Tu did not believe in her abilities, he would choose to believe her at this time. But he, in order to side with Mu Wuxuan, would rather let himself wear a cuckold." Yun Luofeng could not help but ponder over this matter. "Feng according to what you've said, it's true." Yun Luo fell silent for a moment before returning to his senses. "Gao Tu is too biased towards the Mu family. If it wasn't for some reason, I would never believe it. So, that dog Mu Xingqiu cannot be touched for now. A murderous glint flashed across Yun Luofeng's eyes. However, I can swear that one day, I will use Mu Xingqiu's head as a sacrifice to my parents. I will also make the unreasonable biased Gao Tu roll down from his high position. Good. Yun Luo laughed out loud and patted Yun Luofeng's shoulder. You are truly worthy of being a descendant of my Yun family. My Yun family members can lack other things, but they must have confidence and ambition. I believe that your achievements in the future will definitely be very high. Looking at the old man's relaxed expression, Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a devilish smile. In a few days, the red arbor tree would bear spirit fruits. It was time for her to give this old man 2 surprises. The next day, in the rear courtyard of the Yun family, a young girl lay lazily on a chaise longue. She held a grape in her hand and carefully removed the seeds from it before placing the sparkling, translucent grape into her mouth. I wonder what will happen if I plant these fruit trees in the divine grimoire space. The corners of Yun Luofeng's lips curled up into a devilish smile. Of course, as she was only thinking about it. Who knew that just as she had this thought, a young and tender voice would ring out from within her soul. If you eat up Yun Shao completely, I will tell you that fruit trees can also be planted. Xiao Mo's voice sounded a little angry. It had been more than half a year and his master had not made any progress at all. He was about to die from anxiety. Oh. Yun Luofeng gently raised an eyebrow. But you've already told me. What should I do? Chapter 150. In her soul, there was a moment of silence. Then, she heard a loud wail, causing her soul to tremble. Wah, master, I don't want to talk to you anymore, you big jerk. The adorable little fellow cried and threw a tantrum before cutting off all contact with Yun Luofeng and ignoring her in a fit of pique. However, Yun Luofeng could see the little fellow squatting in a corner and drawing circles, his adorable face filled with grief. Just as Yun Luofeng was about to console him, a familiar figure entered her line of sight. Her lips curled into a smile. Yun Shao, have you completed your mission? The man nodded grimly. 1,000 kowtows, not one less. Just 100 kowtows was enough to make a person bleed. Hence, one could imagine Mu Xingqiu's tragic state. He would probably need to rest for a long time after this incident. My lady. Suddenly, a maidservant hurried in. His Highness the Crown Prince is here to visit. The Crown Prince. Yun Luofeng raised an evil brow. Let him in. Yes, my lady. After reporting, the maidservant hurried out. Not long after, a handsome young man dressed in green robes appeared before her eyes. The young man's face was pale and he looked exhausted. His sharp black eyes stared at Yun Luofeng, who was lying on the chaise longue, and a complicated look appeared in his eyes. Yun Luofeng, did you do this on purpose? Gao Ling clenched his fists tightly. The first thing he had said to Yun Luofeng was not to beg for her to heal him, nor was it to beg for her forgiveness. Instead, it was a question. I did it on purpose. What can you do to me? What can you do to me? The young girl's tone was arrogant and domineering, as if she had no regard for this man, who was the dream lover of thousands of girls in Long Yuan country. You. Gao Ling's handsome face turned ashen and he spat angrily. You knew that I would regret this in the future. That's why you made me promise not to pester you that day by the Qin River, am I right? This woman did it on purpose. She had lied to me so that I would not pester her in the future. Yun Luofeng glanced at Gao Ling's remorseful face, raised the corners of his lips and said, looks like I have good foresight. Gao Ling's heart trembled violently. That's right, Yun Luofeng was still a piece of trash who couldn't cultivate. However, based on her medical skills, she was qualified to become his crown princess. How could he let her go just like that? Furthermore, Elder Rong from the medical pavilion was full of admiration for this genius physician. Gao Ling was regretting his decision. Yun Luofeng. Gao Ling took a few steps towards Yun Luofeng and said arrogantly, "You've loved me for so many years. You can't possibly become heartless just because you want to. I know that I'm still in your heart, you just don't want to admit it. No problem, this prince will fulfill my original promise and marry you." Yun Luofeng smiled. "What about Mu Wushuang?" Gao Ling was taken aback. After a moment of silence, he said, "I will marry both of you at the same time. Are you satisfied? You want to hug them on both sides? That's not a bad idea." Yun Luofeng laughed icily. Her tone was unruly and her expression was insolent. "Unfortunately, I, Yun Luofeng, will never share my man with anyone else. My man can only have me as his woman. If he dares to touch anyone else, I will cripple this pair of adulterers." Chapter 151. Yun Luofeng. Gao Ling could no longer suppress the anger in his chest. He clenched his fists and said, "That's impossible. It's normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. No man would choose to marry only one woman. Marry me and I'll give you the honorable status of being the mother of the world. You'll be revered by all." The corners of Yun Luofeng's lips curled up into a devilish smile. Her voice was calm, so calm that it caused a storm to rise in one's heart. "If that's the case, I'd rather not marry for the rest of my life." She'd rather not marry for the rest of her life than to share a man with someone else. Just how much courage did one have to make a woman say such words that went against the world? Yun Shao glanced coldly at Gao Ling, who was about to explode in anger. He silently removed the grape seeds and brought the sparkling, jade-like grape to Yun Luofeng's lips. From the beginning to the end, he had never placed Gao Ling in his eyes. The young girl narrowed her eyes and her red lips gently sucked on the grape. She even swallowed the man's finger. A devilish smile appeared on her beautiful face and her warm tongue licked the man's finger. She stretched lazily and reclined on the chaise longue. With a smile that did not reach her eyes, she said, "There are rumors in the outside world that I, Yun Luofeng, am extremely lustful. Even though Mu Wushuang has proven that he was the one who spread these rumors, it's still very true. With such a perfect man by my side, do you think I'll continue to like you?" Gao Ling had noticed Yun Zhao's presence ever since he had entered the Yun family's backyard. However, he had deliberately avoided looking at him. Honestly, when he saw this man who stood beside Yun Luofeng like a mountain, a sense of inferiority arose from the depths of his heart. He did not know where this feeling of inferiority came from. He only felt that this cold man's aura was too strong and his features were so perfect that it made him jealous. That was why he had chosen to ignore him. However, when he heard Yun Luofeng's words, Gao Ling felt a surge of anger in his chest. He turned his gaze towards the expressionless man and spat fiercely, "Yun Luofeng, he's just a guard. Based on his status, he's not worthy of you. So what if this man's aura is strong?" A guard was a guard, there was simply no comparison between them. "Is that so?" Yun Luofeng raised her eyebrows slightly. She stretched lazily and stood up from the chaise longue. Then, she tugged on Yun Zhao's shirt forcefully and pulled him in front of her. She raised her head and kissed the man's cold lips. The man was startled at first, then he recalled the contents of the erotic pictures. He subconsciously hugged the girl in front of him, and somewhat awkwardly responded to the girl's kiss. "Looks like you've seen the contents of the erotic pictures?" Yun Luofeng pushed the man away and narrowed his eyes. A dangerous arc flashed across his eyes. Yun Shao thought that she was angry. Her heart tightened, but she still nodded honestly, "If you don't like it, I can throw it away." Yun Luofeng smiled and her stern expression disappeared along with her smile. Her lips curled into a demonic smile as she patted Yun Zhao's shoulder encouragingly. Not bad, you are worth teaching. You are much more mature than before. If it was the Yun Zhao from half a year ago, she reckoned that he would have fled the moment she kissed him. Have you seen enough? Yun Luofeng swept her gaze towards Gao Ling and smiled at the young man's eyes, which were filled with anger. If you've seen enough, you can get lost. I'm not interested in showing others a live version of the erotic pictures. Chapter 152. Gao Ling's face was ashen as he spat angrily. Yun Luofeng, you've actually degenerated yourself into an illicit relationship with a guard. You have no sense of shame. You're absolutely despicable. This crown prince must have been blind to want to save a whore like you. It's not like I don't have any other women besides you. Based on my noble status, countless women have sent themselves to my bed. Don't regret losing me. He was nearly driven mad with anger. This woman is actually flirting with a guard right in front of me. Furthermore, she would rather choose a lowly guard than me. Be it in terms of status or power, I'm definitely more powerful than this guard. Yun Luofeng will regret losing the chance to become the crown prince's consort. Likewise, Yun Luofeng curled his lips and retorted, however, let me remind you, you've slept with so many women. If one day you come down with a venereal disease, don't come begging for me to treat you. I won't treat anyone from the imperial family. The young girl's words brought Gao Ling back to his senses. How could he have forgotten that his main purpose for coming here was to treat his illness? In the end, he had been so angered by these two lovey-dovey that he had forgotten his original purpose. Even the people from the medical pavilion had said that Yun Luofeng was the only one who could treat him. He could not give up on this opportunity. Yun Luofeng, was it you that caused me to lose all of my spiritual power? I'll give you a chance now. Treat me and we'll call it even. The more Gao Ling thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. That day by the Qin River, Yun Luofeng must have done something to him, which was why he had lost all his spiritual power. Yun Luofeng sneered, I've said it before, I won't treat you. You. Gao Ling was about to curse, but he swallowed his words. His face was ashen as he said, I'm the crown prince of the empire. You're the general's daughter, I order you to treat me. Order. Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow. Do you know what price the people from the medical pavilion had to pay to come to me? Not only did they offer me a red tree, they even asked me to treat you in a polite manner. You want me to treat you with a single order? Ridiculous, too ridiculous. Jailing's words sounded like a joke. Yun Luofeng laughed out loud. Jailing, 10 years ago, my second uncle was seriously injured. My father went to the palace to save him. He even knelt before the royal doctor, but your people didn't do anything. What right do you have to ask me to save you? Unless your father personally kneels in front of my old man, I might consider it. 10 years ago, Gao Tu only needed to say one word, and second uncle wouldn't have to be paralyzed for 10 years. It was a pity that Gao Tu's words never came. Therefore, if she wanted him to save Gao Ling, she might consider it if Gao Tu knelt in front of old Master Gao himself. However, this was only a consideration. It was not certain whether he would help. Yun Luofeng, don't go overboard. My father is the emperor, and Yun Luo is only a subject. If the monarch wants the minister to die, the minister has no choice but to die. If my father wanted to kill Yun Luo, he would only need to say the word. If it weren't for the fact that Yun Luo has guarded the borders for so many years, your words today would be enough to execute his entire family. Yun Luofeng laughed evilly and said arrogantly, since I, Yun Luofeng, dare to say such words, it means that I'm not afraid of the royal family. I don't know what it means to say that if the emperor wants a subject to die, the subject must die. I only know that whoever offends the Yun family will be executed. Chapter 153. 10 years. The Yun family had endured for 10 years. Now, because of her appearance, it was time for the Yun family to rise again. No one would ever dare to offend the Yun family again. Yun Shao, throw him out of here. If Gao Ling dares to step into the general's residence in the future, I'll break one of his legs. If he dares to take 2 steps, I'll break both of his legs. How will he be able to walk through the gates of the general's residence? The young lady flicked her sleeves and crossed her legs. She exuded a domineering aura, as if she was the ruler of the world. She looked like a true ruler as she sat on a chair and looked down at Gao Ling. Before Gao Ling could react, he felt a tall, black shadow looming over him. A cold, murderous aura emanated from the shadow, causing his heart to tremble. Then, a powerful force slammed into his chest. Immediately, his body shot out like an arrow from a bow, flying out of the courtyard and out of the door. No one had noticed that after Yun Shao had thrown Gao Ling out of the courtyard, her cold eyes had inadvertently glanced at an old tree not too far away. Then, a gray figure had flown out of the courtyard from behind the old tree. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared without anyone noticing. Outside the gates of the general's residence, the crowd had gathered and were pointing at Gao Ling, who had flown out of the general's residence. Gao Ling felt ashamed. He quickly rose to his feet and hurriedly walked towards the other side of the street. However, he did not notice that a gray shadow was following closely behind him. Just as Gao Ling turned into an alley, a fist suddenly came from behind and landed on Gao Ling's back with a loud thud. Pfft! Gao Ling spat out a mouthful of blood and turned angrily towards the man in gray. He asked angrily, "Who are you? Why did you attack me?" TSK, the man in gray stroked his chin and clicked his tongue. This crown prince of Long Yuan country is really soft and tender. If I were to sell him to the bamboo house, he would fetch a good price. Hearing the man in gray's words, Gao Ling's expression changed completely. There was no one in the mainland who did not know what the bamboo house was. Don't be fooled by the elegant name of the bamboo house. It was actually a brothel. However, it was different from ordinary brothels. The people in this brothel were all men. All the guests they served were men. It could be said that Bamboo House provided a chance for a pervert with a fetish for men to enjoy. As for the owner of the bamboo building, it was said that she was a woman, but no one had ever seen her true appearance. Hero, Gao Ling took a deep breath and suppressed the rage in his heart. He then asked, "May I know how I've offended you?" "You didn't offend me, you offended my master." The man in gray robes glanced at Gao Ling and laughed gloatingly. "However, you've got guts to snatch my master's woman. You must be tired of living. Selling you into a bamboo house to serve a man is really a bargain for you." It was said that Lin Cheong, the unlucky girl, was punished by her master because she didn't do her best in dealing with young madam. Therefore, he had to perform well so that he wouldn't end up like that unlucky guy. "Who is your master?" Gao Ling was taken aback. This man in gray was far too powerful. Perhaps even the strongest cultivator of the royal family was no match for him. If that was the case, wouldn't his master be even more powerful? "You don't even know who my master is." The man in gray looked at Gao Ling with disdain. "Of course, you don't deserve to know my master's name. All you need to know is that he's called the Ghost Emperor." Chapter 154. The Ghost Emperor. Gao Ling raised his head in shock and his eyes widened as if he had been frightened. His handsome face instantly turned pale. "Did you say the Ghost Emperor?" Others may not know about the Ghost Emperor, but as the crown prince of the royal family, Gao Ling was well aware of the powers that were above the royal family. The Ghost Emperor was a legendary figure and no one had ever seen his true face. It was said that he was extremely powerful and bloodthirsty. He could turn a city into ashes with a wave of his hand and trample millions of soldiers with a lift of his foot. Even the spiritual sect behind the royal family had to be wary of him. However, Gao Ling could not figure out when he had offended the Ghost Emperor and snatched his woman away. Suddenly, a possibility surfaced in Gao Ling's mind, and his expression darkened. Even though he had regretted his actions and wanted to save Yun Luofeng, he had only left the general's mansion for half an incense's time. Therefore, the Ghost Emperor's woman could not be that slut, Yun Luofeng. There was only one possibility. It had to be Mu Wuxuang. He never thought that the Ghost Emperor would take a liking to Mu Wuxuang. If that was the case, it would be troublesome for him to marry Mu Wuxuang. Hero, a light flashed across Gao Ling's eyes as he asked, actually, the person that the Ghost Emperor hates is not me, but Yun Luofeng, who has humiliated the woman he loves. The gray-robed man was dumbfounded. He blinked his eyes in a daze. What did this guy mean by that? What does he mean by Yun Luofeng has humiliated the woman my master loves? Doesn't my master love Yun Luofeng? When has Yun Luofeng ever humiliated me? No matter what you say now, it's useless. The man in gray could not understand the meaning of this sentence, so he did not say anything more. He sneered at Gao Ling. Chun Yang has been in dire need of manpower recently. With your soft and tender skin, I'm sure you'll be able to earn a fortune for her. Bang! This time, without giving Gao Ling any chance to react, the man in gray raised his elbow and slammed it into Gao Ling's forehead. Gao Ling's vision blurred and he lost consciousness. Who told you to try and take liberties with my future madam? The man in gray kicked Gao Ling's back and spat angrily. Is Lady Yun someone that a good-for-nothing like you can dream of? What's so great about a crown prince? How dare you order Miss Yun to treat your illness? I didn't expect my master to listen to Miss Yun. If I let you order Miss Yun around, wouldn't that mean that my master's status isn't as noble as yours? The more the gray-robed man thought about it, the angrier he became. He kicked Gao Ling even harder. If not for the fact that his master did not want others to know his identity, he would have already announced that Yun Luofeng was the future wife of the Ghost Emperor. She wanted to see how these shameless people would pester her now. The last kick landed on Gao Ling's crotch. The intense pain caused Gao Ling's body to tremble and he almost woke up. Unfortunately, he didn't wake up and was knocked out again by the gray-robed man. If it wasn't for Master wanting to spare your life for now, I would have already dismembered you into 1,000 pieces. The gray-robed man snorted coldly. He swiftly put Gao Ling into a sack and slung it over his shoulder. Then, he quickly flew away. The bamboo building was similar to the medical pavilion. Every country had a station. However, the influence of the two forces was completely different. Of these two parties, one focused on medical skills, while the other focused on having fun. Oh, I was wondering who it was today. It's actually young Master Qin. Chapter 155. Dressed in a long, jade-green dress, she gracefully walked down the stairs. This was an extremely beautiful woman. Her seductiveness was different from Fang Ye's. Compared to Fang Ye's enchanting appearance, this woman was more of a flirt. She was naturally seductive and when she raised her hand, it made people feel that she was intentionally seducing them. Only women who often hung out in romantic places would have this kind of seductive attitude. The corner of the man's forehead twitched and he shook his head helplessly. When you're facing me, can you put away your seductiveness? No wonder my master doesn't like you. Chun Yang's expression stiffened for a moment. She took a deep breath and her pair of romantic eyes contained a hint of resentment. Your master is truly unreasonable. I only wanted to follow him, but he refused me without even thinking about it. In any case, I, Chun Yang, have managed such a large bamboo building, but he didn't give me any face. My master doesn't accept female subordinates. It's not like you don't know this. Furthermore, your bamboo building is such a place. It would be strange if my master would take a liking to it. Qin Yuan looked at her with disdain. This woman managed a romantic place, how could master not hate her? Based on her, she still wanted to follow master. Master probably couldn't even be bothered to look at her. I know that your master hates women, but this bamboo building of mine is a business between men. Your master shouldn't be this disgusted. Chun Yang knitted her willowy eyebrows. You don't understand. Qin Yuan said mockingly, my master has kept his chastity for so many years just to wait for his future wife. Now that he has found the target he wants to pursue, he didn't hesitate to put down all his dignity and willingly become her bodyguard. Chun Yang's eyes lit up, are you serious? There's really a woman who can accept your master? I'm very curious about who that woman is. Unfortunately, I've always thought of your master as a homosexual. Moreover, I'm planning to draw him and another man in my sketchbook. Qin Yuan's face darkened. Chun Yang, on account of our many years of friendship, let me give you a warning. If you dare to draw my master and another man, my master will definitely kill you. However, if you draw him and his future wife, maybe my master will be happy and let you go to Long Yuan Nation to serve his wife. Of course, don't count on becoming my master's subordinate. Actually, Qin Yuan was just casually saying these words. Who would have thought that Chun Yang would actually take it seriously? She unconsciously fell into deep thought. A woman who could subdue a ghost emperor must be very domineering. In that case, who would go up and who would go down? This problem needed to be carefully considered. Chun Yang, I'm here today to give you something. Qin Yuan recalled the events of today. He threw the gunny sack on his shoulder onto the ground. At that moment, the gunny sack loosened and an unconscious youth appeared in front of Madame Chun's eyes. Looking at the youth's fair and handsome face, Madame Chun's eyes lit up once again. This time, the goods are really not bad. Soft skin and tender flesh. I reckon that we can sell them for a good price. Qin Yuan raised the corners of his lips, this fellow is the crown prince of Long Yuan Nation. He had delusions of pestering my future wife and had offended my master. So I've sent him to you to enjoy 3 months. Within these 3 months, find me a few hundred strong men to serve him. After 3 months, throw him back to Long Yuan Nation. Also, my future wife doesn't like people interfering with her matters. In the future, you must never reveal that my master had asked you to do this. Otherwise, I won't be able to protect you. Chapter 156. Hearing this, Chun Yang shuddered. It was obvious that she was terrified of the man who was known as the Ghost Emperor. Don't worry, I'll take good care of him. Chun Yang regained her senses and gritted her teeth. This guy can offend anyone, but he even dares to offend the Ghost Emperor's woman. He must be tired of living. I'll let him receive guests tonight. He must receive 100 guests every day before he can rest. Qin Yuan nodded. Chun Yang, you should thank me. This crown prince is not bad looking and it's his first time selling himself. I'm sure you'll earn a lot of money. Hee hee, Chun Yang giggled and winked at Qin Yuan. Thank you, young Master Qin. If you have such good stuff in the future, you must send it to me. To thank you, I'll never draw you with another man in my sketchbook ever again. Qin Yuan's face darkened once again. Every time he thought of this woman drawing him with another man, he would feel the urge to explode in anger. Who asked him to befriend such a perverted woman when he was young and immature? It was too late for regrets now. After Mu Xingqiu and his grandson pleaded guilty, another major event happened in Long Yuan country. On the day after Mu Xingqiu and his grandson pleaded guilty, Crown Prince Gao Ling disappeared. The citizens of Long Yuan country thought that Gao Ling had been provoked by Mu Wuxuan and felt that he had loved the wrong person all this while. Hence, he chose to hide out of humiliation. Because of this, Mu Wuxuan did not dare to appear in public and sealed himself in the Prime Minister's residence. Only Yun Luofeng knew that this matter had something to do with Yun Xiao. Only Yun Luofeng would have the motive to attack Gao Ling. However, Yun Luofeng did not question Yun Xiao's actions. She pretended not to know anything and began to cultivate every day until nightfall. Fortunately, her tireless cultivation was also successful, and her cultivation was advancing by leaps and bounds, in the backyard of the general's residence. Yun Luofeng frowned and looked at the young girl walking in front of him. He asked in confusion, "Fenger, where are you taking me?" The young girl slowly turned her head and smiled evilly. "You'll know when we get there. Now, prepare yourself, I have a big surprise for you." Surprise? Yun Luo's old face glowed with pride. "You little girl, did you fill up my treasury again?" "Ha ha ha, my granddaughter is more capable. Quick, take me to the treasury." Ever since he learned about his granddaughter's medical skills, the old man was no longer as thrifty as before. He desperately began to spend money. Anyway, many people would send money to his house after he spent it all. It would be a waste if he didn't spend it. Anyway, the money was earned by his granddaughter. Shouldn't he be filial to the old man? Yun Luofeng's face was full of black lines. "This surprise isn't in the silver treasury. You'll know once you come with me." "No longer in the treasury." The old man frowned again. Since it wasn't money, what kind of surprise could it be? As he was thinking, the old man suddenly noticed that the girl in front of him had stopped. He couldn't help but be stunned. "We've arrived." "That's right." The young girl slowly turned her head and raised the corners of her lips in a demonic manner. "It's been more than half a year since I established the Steel Flame Legion. Grandpa, it's time to show you my power. At the same time, I'll let you see someone." The surprise that this little girl was talking about was the Legion. The old man was stunned once again. This Legion had only been established for half a year and it shouldn't have become very powerful. After all, no one knew the talents of the previous members better than he did. If that was the case, what did this little girl mean? Chapter 157. Seeing that the young girl had opened the entrance to the underground tunnel, Yun Luo returned to his senses and followed Yun Luofeng down the stairs without any hesitation. Over the past 6 months, the old man had not come to the underground training ground so as not to disturb Yun Luofeng's interest. Now, when he saw how luxurious the training ground was, he was completely shocked. The enormous training ground was divided into a few rings. These rings were constructed in a strict and dignified manner. From afar, it gave off a sense of grandeur. Other than that, there were countless houses for people to stay in the training ground. It was warm in the winter and cool in the summer. It was very comfortable. "Little girl, how big of a hole did you dig? Why didn't you notice anything when you dug such a big training ground?" The old man looked at Yun Luofeng in shock. He found it hard to believe that this little girl had dug such a big hole without anyone noticing. A project like this could not have been completed without a few months. "It's all thanks to this little fella's help." Yun Luofeng smiled devilishly. Just as she finished speaking, a little head peeked out from her sleeve. Its big and adorable eyes scanned the surroundings before stopping on Yun Luofeng and it squeaked twice. "This is a gold-seeking rat." The old man was even more shocked, and it's a low-rank high spiritualist at that. Impossible. Gold-seeking rats were the most useless of spiritual beasts. It was said that they would never be able to break through to an intermediate beginner spiritualist, so how could they become a high spiritualist? Could it be that he had been wrong all this while? It just broke through to become a high spiritualist yesterday. Yun Luofeng gently stroked Milk Tea's little head and raised the corners of his lips. Of course, this little fella isn't a surprise for you. I've brought you here today mainly to let you meet someone. At that moment, a voice suddenly rang out from behind, causing the puzzled old man's body to stiffen. Father, you're here. The old man turned his head stiffly. Suddenly, a handsome and elegant face appeared in front of him. Chinya, weren't you at the back of the mountain? Why are you here at the training ground? Also, your leg. It was only at this moment that Yun Luo suddenly realized that the man in front of him wasn't sitting on the wheelchair but was standing in front of him. His legs were very straight and his body was tall and slender. His handsome face no longer had its usual sadness and was replaced by a confident smile. Just like the talented young man who had swept the entire Long Yuan nation 10 years ago. What's going on? The old man's voice trembled slightly. You too, tell me, what happened? Grandfather. Yun Luofeng looked at Yun Qingya and slowly walked in front of the old man. He smiled and said, actually, half a year ago, I had already helped second uncle recover from his injuries. However, because he had been paralyzed for 10 years, he couldn't walk like an ordinary person and had to learn to walk from the beginning. That's why I didn't tell you about this matter. Now that second uncle can move freely, it's time for me to tell you everything. The old man's entire body trembled. The gaze he used to look at Yun Qingya turned from shock to excitement. Then, he suddenly thought of something and turned around. He grabbed Yun Luofeng's clothes and shouted angrily, "You damned girl, what else are you hiding from me? Hurry up and tell me everything." Chapter 158. At this moment, the old man was furious. He glared angrily at Yun Luofeng, as if he wanted to tear the other party apart and eat him alive. In the eyes of those who didn't know better, they would think that this girl was his enemy. Yun Luofeng looked at the old man's hand that was holding onto her clothes and raised his eyebrows. I haven't told you yet. My second uncle has already become the commander of the Iron Man Legion. For the past 6 months, he has been helping me train these people. Other than that, what else? The old man snorted unhappily. This girl had really hidden a lot of things from him in the past half a year. She hadn't even told her that Qingya's leg had been cured. How could this not make the old man angry? Unfortunately, he couldn't bear to hit her, so he could only roar a few times to vent the unwillingness in his heart. This. Yun Luofeng said guiltily, you'll know when you see the people of the Iron Flame Legion. As he spoke, a series of neat and uniform footsteps came from behind him. It was as if they were trained soldiers, and it immediately attracted the old man's attention. The old man let go of the girl in his hand and turned to look at the people who were marching over. When he saw the dignified figures of those people, his eyes were filled with shock. These people are the useless trash who were like mud half a year ago. This group of people were soldiers who had received formal training. They were not inferior to the royal army. But half a year ago, they were just a group of trash at the bottom. It's all thanks to second uncle's good training. Yun Luofeng raised the corner of her lips. Under the leadership of her second uncle, the Iron Man Legion had gradually grown up, and the Flame Legion was not bad either. Even she was surprised by the achievements and perseverance of these people. Yun Qingya smiled. Her handsome eyes were filled with gentleness as she looked at Yun Luofeng. No, my training is only a supplementary effect. The real reason why these people have grown up is because of Feng'er. If it wasn't for the marrow-cleansing medicine and spirit-gathering medicine that Feng'er took out, they wouldn't have grown so quickly. At first, Yun Luo only noticed the tenacity of these people. Now that he heard Yun Qingya's words, he used his mental strength to probe the strength of these people. When he felt the power of the entire army, the old man was dumbfounded. He stood there like a tree stump. How was this possible? The imperial family had also probed the talents and foundations of these people. None of them would be able to break through to the rudimentary intermediate spiritualist stage in their lifetime. Now, everyone in the army had become intermediate spiritualists, and a few of them had even broken through to advanced spiritualists. His strength was equal to that of a general like him. One had to know that the most powerful person in Long Yuan country was only a high spiritual warrior. Therefore, if Yun Luofeng brought out the strength of this legion, it would surely cause an intense wave of shock. Perhaps even the people behind the royal family would be lured out. Feng tell me, how did you do it? The old man slowly turned to look at Yun Luofeng. One could imagine how shocked he was. These people's aptitudes are very low, so how did you help them become advanced spiritualists? Yun Luofeng smiled disapprovingly. Her eyes were filled with confidence. I've said it before, I don't choose people based on talent. Even if they are trash, I can turn them into geniuses. As for the marrow cleansing liquid, it could cleanse one's marrow and bones, and reforge one's innate talent. If they can't even break through under such conditions, then there's no need for me to form this army. Chapter 159. The old man's breathing tightened. Excitement was written all over his face. He rubbed his fists and said with a smile, "Little girl, is that marrow cleansing liquid really that effective? Then this old man plans to live in this place from now on and bathe in the marrow cleansing liquid every day." His expression as he looked at the marrow cleansing liquid was as if he was facing a top-grade beauty. His gaze was lustful and wretched, as if he wanted to strip off the clothes of that top-grade beauty. Yun Qingya's face was filled with black lines. She subconsciously wanted to pretend that she didn't know this old man. She had never seen an old man look at a pool of water with a lustful gaze. This was too embarrassing. Yun Luofeng was silent for a moment before he raised his lips and said, "If you like, you can come here and bathe in the marrow cleansing liquid. However, you are already old, and the marrow cleansing liquid does not have much of an effect on you, so I have prepared another gift for you." As soon as she finished speaking, Yun Luofeng reached into her sleeves and pulled out a vermilion fruit. When the old man saw the vermilion fruit, he couldn't help but be stunned. Red fruit. Wasn't this the red fruit that the people from the medical pavilion had given her? It was said that it took a year for the red fruit to bear fruit. It had only been half a year, and the red fruit had already successfully borne fruit. Yun Luofeng shrugged his shoulders. In theory, this should be a red fruit, but I'm used to calling it a spirit fruit. As for its effects, you'll know when you eat it. The old man didn't hesitate. He took the fruit Yun Luofeng passed to him and took a bite. Immediately, a fragrant aroma flowed through his mouth, causing his eyes to suddenly brighten. In a few bites, he finished the spirit fruit. This red fruit tastes pretty good. When the time comes, prepare more of them and put them in my study. When I'm greedy, I can use them to satisfy my cravings. The old man wiped his mouth, his chrysanthemum-like old face full of smiles. Yun Luofeng's face darkened. What did this old fellow think the spirit fruit was? To satisfy his cravings. If his words were to spread, there would probably be many people on the continent who would gang up on him. Boom! Suddenly, a powerful wave of spiritual energy rushed into the old man's dantian and fiercely collided against the barrier. In an instant, the originally solid barrier was like a thin piece of paper. It was broken by the powerful spiritual energy and reached a new realm. The old man was dumbfounded. Yun Qingya was stunned, even the members of the Steel Flame Legion were astonished. They looked at the dumbfounded old man, not understanding what was going on. Why did General Yun break through without any warning? Looks like the effects of this spirit fruit are pretty good. The girl's lazy laughter entered his ears, causing the stiff old man to raise his head mechanically. His voice began to tremble at this moment, and his words were clearly filled with disbelief. What's going on? That barrier of his had existed for many years, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not advance a single level. But why did he actually break through now? This was simply impossible. I said before, not only will I help second uncle stand up, I will also think of a way to help you break through. Yun Luofeng chuckled. His demonic eyes stared at Yun Luofeng as the corners of his lips curled up. Now, I have fulfilled my promise. Boom! Thunder pierced through the ears. After receiving Yun Luofeng's acknowledgement, Yun Luofeng was once again dumbfounded. He thought back to how he had asked Yun Luofeng to give him the red fruit as a snack. It was simply ridiculous. Chapter 160. A spiritual fruit that could allow advanced spiritualists to break through was much rarer than the simple red fruit. Perhaps his granddaughter could only produce one of them. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, a burst of crazy laughter resounded throughout the underground training ground. His laughter was filled with madness, but it also revealed the excitement in his heart. How many years has it been? How many years has it been since I broke through? Gao Tu, you dog emperor, just you wait. I'll make you pay for everything that happened back then. Yun Luofeng glanced at the crazy old man, then he looked at the people from the army. There are 3 people from the Iron Steel Army that broke through to become paramount spiritualists, and 2 from the Flame Army. The 5 of you can come forward to receive a spiritual fruit, but I suggest that you consume it when you're an intermediate high spiritualist to use it to break through. The old man, who was laughing hysterically, was caught off guard when he heard Yun Luofeng's words. As a result, he could not hold back his laughter and choked on his own saliva. His face flushed, and he coughed violently. Bastard, how many fucking spiritual fruits do you have? The old man finally caught his breath and glared at Yun Luofeng furiously. Earlier on, the young lady said that she was going to give him a surprise, but he thought that it was more like a shock. If he was not careful, he might not be able to withstand the surprise and suffer a heart attack. Yun Luofeng kept quiet for some time before he answered conservatively, I'll probably be able to give one to each member of the Iron Flame Army. Yun Luofeng's heart twitched when he heard what Yun Luofeng said, and it almost stopped beating. He initially thought that Yun Luofeng would only have one of such a magical fruit at most. Who knew that the young fellow would be able to get so many of them without a sound? Enough for each member of the Iron Flame Army to have one. As if he thought that Yun Luofeng was not shocked enough, Yun Luofeng added, even if these fruits are used up, I can still get more. Therefore, if the Yun family's protectors break through to become advanced spiritualists, they can also come to me to receive a spiritual fruit, provided that they're loyal to the Yun family. Yun Luo completely went crazy. He once again grabbed Yun Luofeng's clothes and said angrily, you little girl, why didn't you take out such a good thing earlier to show your filial respect to your grandfather? Quick, give me another 180, the more the better. In any case, I won't complain about having more. The corners of Yun Luofeng's eyebrows slightly slanted upwards. He raised his hand and slapped away Yun Luo's claw. The spirit fruit will only be effective the first time you eat it. After that, no matter how much you eat, it won't be of much use. Can't I eat it like a fruit? The old man rolled his eyes and reached out his hand domineeringly. Quick, hand over the spirit fruit. Yun Luofeng's heart twitched. She took out 2 more spirit fruits from her sleeve and placed them in the old man's hand. What else? I only brought 3 with me. I don't have any more now. I'll give you all 3. I'll bring the rest to your study tomorrow. Hearing Yun Luofeng's words, Yun Luo looked at her suspiciously and asked doubtfully, "Are you telling the truth? More real than pearls?" Yun Luofeng nodded with a sincere look on her face. "If that's the case, I'll let you off for now." Yun Luo kept the spirit fruits and scoffed. "Remember, if you have anything good in the future, show your filial respect to your grandfather first." Chapter 161. Yun Luofeng finally heaved a sigh of relief and replied with a smile, "Understood. In the future, no matter what good things I have, I'll be the first to bring them to you." "That's more like it." The old man smiled in satisfaction. "All right, I won't disturb you anymore. Train well, I'll be leaving first." "Ha ha ha." Yun Luofeng laughed heartily and walked out of the training room. Second uncle. After Yun Luofeng saw that the old man had left, he turned to look at the handsome and elegant man. "I still have 5 spiritual fruits here, so you can distribute them to the members who have become advanced spiritualists. If anyone else becomes an advanced spiritualist in the future, remember to inform me." Yun Qingye smiled. "All right. By the way, second uncle, remember to take the medicine I gave you on time. Tomorrow, I have something to do and will have to leave Long Yuan country. When I return, I'll help you repair your dantian and restore your strength." Yun Qingye was stunned. She looked at Yun Luofeng with excitement. "Xiao Fenger, you said that I can recover my strength." "That's right." Yun Luofeng nodded. "Not only can I help you recover your strength, I can also make you stronger. The prerequisite is that you can't stop using the medicine I give you. When I return, I'll be able to help you recover your strength." At this moment, Yun Qingye's heart was in turmoil. Ever since he had been injured 10 years ago, he had never thought that he would be able to recover his strength. Now that he was able to stand up again, he was already satisfied. However, he had never expected that his little niece would have the ability to help him recover his strength. This was something he did not even dare to think about. "Xiao Fenger, I really don't know how to thank you." Yun Luofeng blinked and smiled evilly. "We're family, there's no need to thank me. Second uncle, no matter what, I'll cure you completely." Looking at the young girl's determined eyes, Yun Qingye smiled. His handsome face was filled with confidence and pride. "Xiao Fenger, with you in the Yun family, why should we worry about not being strong? Second uncle believes in you and will wait for your return." The members of the Steel Flame Legion were also filled with gratitude, and their determination deepened. There was no other reason than that Yun Luofeng had given them such a precious treasure to consume. It was also because of the spiritual fruits that those who had yet to break through to advanced spiritualists were motivated to work hard. Perhaps even Yun Luofeng did not expect her actions today to make everyone in the army work so hard that they would forget to eat and sleep just to break through to paramount spiritualists. The next day. Dawn. A furious roar resounded through the skies of the Yun family, reverberating for a long time. "Yun Luofeng, you damned girl, you actually dared to run away. When you return, see if I don't smack your butt." This voice was heard by everyone in the Yun family, causing them to jump in fright. They did not understand how the eldest miss had provoked the general, causing the general to lose his temper. It seemed that ever since the general came back, he had been infuriated by eldest miss every 2 or 3 days. They were really afraid that one day, the general would be angered to death by her. Yun Luo was furious. That girl had promised to deliver 180 spirit fruits to his study today. In the end, he had waited for an entire morning, but the young girl had not appeared. Unable to wait any longer, he had personally gone to look for her. However, he had only found a letter in the young girl's room. The letter stated that the little girl had run away from home. Of course, Yun Luo was just joking. He could not bear to actually smack Yun Luofeng's butt. Even if the young girl lost a single strand of hair, his heart would ache for a long time, let alone beating her up. Chapter 162. Flowing Gold Country. It was once one of the most powerful countries on the mainland. However, a few years ago, the general of Flowing Gold Country, Yi Bufan, had been defeated by Yun Luo and was forced to hand over the third prince, Yi Ling, as a hostage. From then on, Flowing Gold Country could only exist as a vassal country to Long Yuan Country. However, in just half a year's time, an organization called the Windfall Pavilion had suddenly appeared in Flowing Gold Country. It was said that the Windfall Pavilion had information on every country on the mainland and was extremely powerful. In just half a year's time, they had become a household name and their name had spread far and wide. However, many organizations had wanted to find out who the pavilion master of the Windfall Pavilion was. However, the pavilion master was very mysterious. No one even knew her name, let alone see her face. At this moment, in the Windfall Pavilion, when Yun Luo Feng had just stepped into the hall, a figure as light as the wind quickly pounced towards Yun Luo Feng. "My lady, I've missed you so much." Qing Yan became excited the moment she saw Yun Luo Feng. Unfortunately, when the white-clothed girl in front of her saw her pouncing figure, she dodged to the side without a second thought. With a plop, Qing Yan didn't have time to stop her steps. She was caught off guard and fell to the ground. "My lady." The little servant girl raised her little face and stared resentfully at Yun Luo Feng. "Qing Yan, I'm here on official business. I don't have time to catch up with you." Yun Luo Feng raised the corners of his lips and a demonic smile hung on his lips. The little girl before him was the newly promoted commander of the Flame Regiment, Qing Yan. In the last half a year, she'd sent Yi Ling and Qing Yan to Flowing Gold Kingdom to establish the Windfall Pavilion and gather information in the world for the sake of finding the true culprit that had killed her parents. Now that she'd almost made some progress, she'd rushed to Flowing Gold Kingdom just now. "That's right, where's Yi Ling? Why haven't I seen him come out?" Yun Luo Feng scanned his surroundings but did not see Yi Ling. An undetectable light flashed across his jet-black eyes. Qing Yan's expression changed slightly when she heard this. "My lady, Yi Ling has been discovered." "What's going on?" Yun Luo Feng turned to look at Qing Yan. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" Qing Yan bit her lip and a hint of anger appeared on her delicate features. A few days ago, Yao Ling had bumped into his half-brother, the second prince Yao Luo, on the street. Yao Luo had recognized him and his arrival in Flowing Gold Country had been exposed. "My lady, do you know how outrageous his brother is? His talent and strength were clearly inferior to Yi Ling's, but he relied on the fact that his mother was doted on and insulted Yi Ling. How infuriating." Seeing the young servant girl's angry eyes, Yun Luo Feng smiled faintly and asked, "Yi Ling was humiliated, not you. Why are you so angry? Don't tell me you and Yi Ling." "Miss." Qing Yan hurriedly interrupted Yun Luo Feng. She angrily stamped her foot, her face flushed red. "What nonsense are you talking about? Yi Ling and I are only companions, that's why I can't bear to see others humiliate him." "It's really not what you think." "Is that so?" Yun Luo Feng smiled devilishly and his jet-black eyes fell upon Qing Yan. "Qing Yan, even though Yi Ling is the third prince of Flowing Gold Country, you are no ordinary little servant girl. You are someone I trust. If the two of you are truly in love with each other, I will make the decision on your behalf regarding this marriage." Qing Yan's heart trembled fiercely, and her clear eyes were filled with deep emotion. Chapter 163. Ever since the young miss had failed to hang herself, she had changed into a completely different person. However, the young miss now not only made her feel very reliable, she liked her even more now. Young miss, I know that you're doing this for my own good. However, even if he and I are in love, the Emperor of Flowing Gold Country would never allow it. The imperial family values a marriage of equal social status. A marriage of equal social status. Yun Luofeng laughed gently. Both of you are members of the Steel Flame Regiment, so this is what they call a marriage of equal social status. If the two of you truly love each other, the Emperor of Flowing Gold Country would never be able to stop you. My, Yun Luofengs, people are never unworthy of anyone. If this is a one-sided love, I cannot help you. After all, matters of the heart cannot be forced. Qing Yan nodded and a bitter smile appeared on her delicate face. Young miss, I understand. Yun Luofeng patted Qing Yan's shoulder soundlessly. Let's go, take me to Yiling. I have a few things to understand from him. Yes, young Mississippi. Under Yun Luofeng's reassurance, Qing Yan regained her cheerfulness. She blinked and giggled as she walked out of Zephyr Pavilion. Yun Luofeng shook his head in exasperation as he stared at the little servant girl's joyful figure. A demonic smile appeared on the corners of his lips before he followed Qing Yan out without any hesitation. In Flowing Gold Country, once a prince comes of age, he will leave the imperial palace and establish his own family. At this moment, Yiling was sitting in his study in the third prince's mansion. He was holding a book in his hand, but his mind was not on the book at all. He looked rather absent-minded. Just then, a squeaking sound suddenly rang out from the side of his feet, instantly attracting his attention. When Yiling noticed the white hamster squeaking at his feet, his eyes widened and he asked in astonishment, "Milk tea, what are you doing here? Could it be?" As if remembering something, Yiling's eyes filled with excitement. He slowly turned his head and his gaze gradually turned towards the door. In that instant, the young girl in white who was leaning against the door entered his sight. The young girl crossed her arms and leaned lazily against the door railing. The corners of her lips curled into a beautiful smile. Her robes were as white as snow and fluttered in the gentle breeze. Yiling, long time no see. I didn't expect you to become the third prince of the Flowing Gold Kingdom. Yiling withdrew the excitement in his eyes and replaced it with respect. He hurriedly rose from his seat and greeted the young lady at the door. "Master, why have you come?" Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. Her white robes fluttered like a gentle breeze and landed on the chair in front of the desk. "What, you don't welcome me?" The young girl brushed her white robes and crossed her legs. She picked up the brush on the table and played with it in her hand. She looked at Yiling with an evil smile in her black eyes, lazy and wanton. "However, I think you're doing a good job as the third prince." She scanned the surroundings of the study, and the smile on her lips deepened. Yiling laughed bitterly. "Master, don't tease me. What's so good about the third prince? It's not as glorious as being the deputy pavilion master of the Windfall Pavilion." "Mistress, I'd rather be the deputy pavilion master of the Windfall Pavilion than be the third prince." The girl burst into laughter and raised her eyebrows slightly. "Tell me, what happened? You've suddenly returned to the Flowing Gold Kingdom. Did the royal family not suspect you?" Chapter 164. Yiling shook her head, her heart filled with bitterness. "I told them that Long Yuan country had sent me to seduce the eldest lady of the general's residence and I took the opportunity to escape. They did not suspect me and allowed me to return to the country. However, my return has offended some people's interests and they have sent many assassins to kill me. Fortunately, my cultivation base has improved by leaps and bounds over the past 6 months, so the assassins have not succeeded." Yun Luofeng lowered his eyes and continued to play with the brush in his hand. An undetectable glint flashed across his dark eyes. "Yiling, how is the matter I asked you to investigate? Who was the one who killed my parents that year?" "More than 10 years ago, the the Yun couple had come up with a plan when they were fighting against Flowing Gold Country. Unfortunately, this plan had been leaked by Prime Minister Mu and was used by the enemy, causing them to fall into a trap. However, the person who had killed the couple was someone else. That person must be related to the royal family of Flowing Gold Country. Yun Luofeng had sent Yiling to Flowing Wind Country to find the real killer. There is some progress in this matter. Yiling glanced at Yun Luofeng. Give me some time and I will find out the truth. However, I can tell you that this matter is related to Empress Rong. Empress Rong was the mother of the second prince, Yi Luo. She had even instigated the emperor to send Yiling to Long Yuan country as a hostage. During this time, she had helped her son become the crown prince. Obviously, her efforts were about to pay off. It was at this time that Yiling returned. How could Empress Rong not hate her? If it were not for the fact that the entire court supported Yiling and that General Yi Bufan was Yiling's uncle, her son would have become the crown prince long ago. Yiling, who had been taken as a hostage, had dared to return to the country. Seeing that her efforts were about to be wasted, imperial concubine Rong could no longer sit still. This was the reason for the assassination every night. What Yun Luofeng did not expect was that even the death of his parents had something to do with her. A murderous intent flashed across his eyes. Yun Luofeng stopped playing with the brush and said, Yiling, I will be staying in Flowing Gold Country for the time being. However, it would be inconvenient for me to stay in Drifting Wind Pavilion. Therefore, I will stay in your third prince's residence and use this opportunity to find out who killed my parents. Yes, master. Yiling replied respectfully. From the moment he had pledged his loyalty to her half a year ago, his life belonged to her. Even if she wanted him to destroy the entire Flowing Gold Country, he would not refuse any of her orders. During the time I stay in your mansion, don't call me master. Yun Luofeng's eyes flashed a few times and his lips curled into a smile. You can just call me by my name. In the Long Yuan country, Yun Luofeng's name could be said to be a household name. There was no one who did not know of her. But now that she was in the Flowing Gold Country, there wouldn't be anyone who had heard of her reputation as trash. Hence, she allowed Yiling to call her by her name. This. Yiling hesitated for a moment. I'll call you Miss Yun. I really can't call you by your name. He didn't dare to offend his superior and call his master's name directly. Even if he was given 100 guts, he wouldn't dare to do so. All right. Yun Luofeng slowly stood up and stretched lazily. I'm a little tired. Help me prepare a room first. I'm going to rest for a while. If there's any news, notify me. With that, she strode out of the study. Chapter 165. What did you say? In the brothel, there was singing and dancing. Inside a private room, a handsome man was hugging women on his left and right. He narrowed his eyes as he stared at his confidant standing in front of him. A sinister light flashed across his eyes. My third royal brother has always had his eyes on the top of his head. Did a woman really stay in the third prince's residence yesterday? Reporting to the second prince, this matter is absolutely true. I did see a beautiful woman dressed in white enter the third prince's residence. Furthermore, that woman was extremely beautiful, even more beautiful than the top courtesan of Red Flower Brothel. The confidant licked his lips in a vulgar manner, his mind still recalling that beautiful face. If he could obtain such a woman, even if it was just for one night, he would be perfectly satisfied. Oh. Yi Luo's eyes brightened, even more beautiful than the top courtesan of Red Flower Brothel. That boy Yiling actually has such luck with women. However, I think that woman was staying in the second prince's residence without any status. She must not be from a good family. She must be the new top courtesan of some brothel. This confidant had followed him for many years and had enjoyed many beautiful women with him. But now, the woman who was openly staying in the second prince's residence was praised by him like this. She must be an extremely beautiful woman. Only he had the right to enjoy such a beautiful woman. Who did Yiling think he was? Immediately send an invitation to Yiling, tell him that I invite him to the residence for a gathering. Yes, Your Royal Highness the second prince. The confidant joined his fists and retreated from the luxurious private room. It was as if the words of his trusted aide had made Yi Luo's mind become active and made him lose interest in the beauties around him. He waved his hand to dismiss the women around him, and a greedy glint flashed across his glowing eyes. He was very curious as to how beautiful that woman was. Even the top courtesan of Red Flower Brothel was outshone by her. Early morning. The morning light shone through the entire residence. It was so warm that it made people feel happy. As soon as Yun Luofeng entered the courtyard, he saw the handsome young man sitting in the pavilion. The young man's gaze was fixed on a certain spot in the courtyard, and there was an undercurrent in his eyes. She followed the youth's gaze, and in an instant, the little servant girl who was playing in the stream fell into her eyes. In that instant, she came to a sudden realization. So this little girl was not having a one-sided love. These two people seemed to have a chance. Yiling, she raised the corner of her lips and called out softly. Inside the pavilion, the youth who was staring blankly at the smoke was pulled back from his thoughts by this voice. He hurriedly came back to his senses and turned to the beautiful young lady who was walking towards him. He was a little apprehensive in his heart. Master, you've come. Yiling, you like Qin Yin. Ah. Yiling was stunned by Yun Luofeng's straightforwardness. A crimson blush flashed across his fair face and his fingers tugged at his robes nervously. I only think that Qin Yin is very cute, like a little sister. I don't, Yiling, I've experienced many things. There are some things that can never be hidden from my eyes. Yun Luofeng turned his gaze away from Qin Yin and slowly turned towards Yi Luo. He asked, I'll ask you one thing. You are the third prince of Flowing Gold Country and Qin Yin is only a little servant girl. If your father opposes you, what choice would you make? Yiling fell silent and his lips curled into a bitter smile. Father. Can he be considered a father? No one can stop me from doing what I want to do, including him. Chapter 166. When she said her last sentence, Yiling's eyes were filled with determination and her tone was unyielding. She had the courage to not fear anyone. If that's the case, I can rest assured. Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow. Yiling, although you and Qin Yin are both my subordinates, but compared to you who had plotted against me, Qin Yin is more important to me. She may be a servant, but in reality, she is no different from my family. In the years before my grandfather returned, she was the only one who never left me and even used her body to block the attacks of others for me. I know, Yiling smiled. In these 2 years, even though I was a hostage, there were times when I was allowed out for a short period of time under the supervision of the palace guards. Once, I saw you being bullied and beaten on the streets. It was Qin Yin who used her body to protect you. When I saw this scene, my heart was filled with admiration for her. I never thought that I would have the chance to work with her one day. That servant was loyal to her master, stubborn and tenacious. Perhaps it was because of this that he, who had always had his eyes on the top of his head, had set his sights on her. It's good that you understand, Yun Luofeng nodded. If you hurt Qin Yin in the future, I won't let you off. However, other than this matter with Qin Yin, I will stand by your side and give you a chance to kill your enemy with your own hands. Yiling's heart trembled and a complicated mix of emotions welled up in his heart. Half a year ago, he had helped the emperor of Long Yuan country to plot against her. He never thought that she would disregard the past and not only give him unparalleled power, she even gave him a chance to kill his enemy with his own hands. As for himself, he was afraid that he would never be able to repay her kindness in this lifetime. Your Highness, the third prince. Just as Yi Ling was sighing in his heart, a servant hurried over and respectfully handed an invitation to Yi Ling. The second prince has sent you an invitation. Yi Ling's face darkened and he took the invitation from the servant. After reading the contents of the invitation, his expression turned even uglier. What happened? Yun Luo Feng raised an eyebrow and turned his gaze towards Yi Ling as he asked. Yi Ling took a deep breath and said, Yi Luo has invited me to his residence for a gathering. And then? If it was just an invitation, Yi Ling wouldn't have been so angry. Hearing Yun Luofeng's question, Yi Ling pursed his thin lips tightly, and a complicated look appeared in his eyes. He asked me to bring you along. Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin and smiled evilly. Since someone has invited us with such hospitality, it would be inexcusable for us not to go. Moss. Yi Ling had originally wanted to address Yun Luofeng as his master, but he suddenly remembered that there was still a servant in the courtyard who had come to deliver the news. He swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue and sighed helplessly. Miss Yun, you probably don't know this Yi Luo's personality. This fellow is extremely lustful. Aside from visiting brothels, he has also kidnapped countless young girls from good families. Judging from his tone, he must have seen you come to my residence and become interested in you. So what? Yun Luofeng chuckled, and there was an evil smile in his eyes. Yi Ling, let's go. Take me to see that so-called second prince. Seeing that Yun Luofeng had made up his mind, Yi Ling did not say anything more and nodded slightly. All right. He was very confident in his master, but when he thought of Yi Luo's wretched look, he was very displeased. Was his master someone that a scum like him could spy on? However, Yi Ling also knew that the reason why Yun Luofeng had invited him was because Yi Ling was Empress Rong's son, and Empress Rong was related to the couple's death. Chapter 167. Flowing Gold Country. On the bustling street, Yun Luofeng, who was walking amongst the crowd, seemed to have noticed something. She slowly turned her head and frowned at the bustling crowd behind her. Master, what's the matter? Yi Ling saw that Yun Luofeng had stopped and a trace of confusion flashed across her eyes. She turned to look at her. Yun Luofeng looked away and shook her head, nothing. She did not know if it was just her imagination, but she felt that ever since she left Long Yuan country, someone had been following her. But every time she turned around, she could not see the figure following her. Could it be that she had been too tired recently and was hallucinating? Yun Luofeng rubbed her forehead. Let's continue walking. All right. Yao Ling's eyes still carried a sense of doubt. However, when he saw that Yun Luofeng had no intention of answering his question, he did not probe any further. His handsome features sank as he said, Master, we'll be arriving soon. When the time comes, remember to stay away from that scum, Yi Luo. Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile at Yi Ling's reminder. Her smile was languid and demonic as she continued walking. As Empress Rong was highly favored by the emperor, compared to the cold and cheerless third prince's palace, the second prince's palace was bustling with visitors. Countless rascals tried to build a good relationship with the royal family so that they could be put in an important position in the future. At this moment, in the courtyard, Yi Luo was hugging women on both sides and flirting with the women next to him. His expression was vulgar and even his hands were placed on the women's sensitive parts. The nobles of Flowing Gold Country seemed to be used to this and no one criticized Yi Luo for being offensive. Suddenly, Yi Luo's eyes narrowed and he stared fixedly in a certain direction. A deep sense of awe appeared in his eyes. The crowd followed his gaze and in an instant, a snow-white dress fell into their eyes. Their eyes were as shocked as Yi Luo's. This young girl was very young, around 14 or 15 years of age. Her face was extremely beautiful and her robes were whiter than snow and fluttered in the wind. At that moment, their breathing stopped for a moment, and even their hearts almost couldn't calm down. There was a smile on the young girl's face from beginning to end. She was bewitching and wanton, and her pair of pitch-black eyes were like the stars in the night sky. One couldn't see the bottom of them at a glance, but they were deeply attracted by her eyes, unable to be pulled away. Where did such a beautiful girl come from? And by the side of the third prince? Could she be his concubine? As for why he called the girl in white a concubine, that was because even though the third prince was not favored by the emperor, he was still very talented. As a noble grandson of the emperor, his wife had to be a princess or a minister. An unknown girl was only qualified to be a concubine. Third royal brother, you're finally here. Ha ha ha, Yi Luo laughed heartily as he walked towards Yi Ling. His face carried a hypocritical smile as he said, all these years you were a hostage, I've missed you dearly. I've even begged royal father many times to take you back. Unfortunately, royal father never had the guts to ask Long Yuan country for you. In the face of Yi Luo's hypocrisy, Yi Ling sneered, is that so? Then I really have to thank you. There's no need for us to be so polite. Yi Luo laughed and tried to pat Yi Ling's shoulder. But just as his hand was about to land on Yi Ling's shoulder, Yi Ling moved to the side and avoided his touch. Chapter 168. Faced with Yi Ling's actions, a vicious light flashed across Yi Luo's eyes, but the smile on his face did not change. Royal brother, long time no see, why are you so distant from me? That's right, I wonder who this lady is. His gaze turned towards Yun Luo Feng and a stunned look appeared in his eyes. Yi Ling's face sank. Second royal brother, Lady Yun is not someone you can violate. He, Yi Luo laughed evilly and said, third royal brother, I didn't think that you would protect your woman like this. I don't have any other intentions, I just want to know which family's daughter this lady is. Hearing Yi Luo refer to his master as his woman, Yi Ling's heart almost stopped beating in fright. He quickly turned to look at the young girl and sighed in relief when he saw that she was not angry. This damned brat actually dared to tease me and master like this. If master gets angry, my little life will be over. For some reason, when Yi Luo said those words, Yi Ling felt a chill run down his spine, as if a pair of cold eyes were staring at him from the shadows. It sent a chill down his spine and made every hair on his body stand on end. Yi Luo, be more respectful when you speak. A trace of anger appeared on Yi Ling's face. If you say such things again, don't blame me for being impolite. Ha ha ha, Yi Luo laughed disapprovingly. Yi Ling, don't think that I don't know this woman's background. She's just a girl from a brothel. Which family's daughter would stay in a prince's residence without any status? I just wanted to test you with a question. I didn't think that you would fly into such a rage out of humiliation. I will definitely report this matter to Imperial Father. Girl from a brothel. When the young men heard Yi Luo's words, their eyes were no longer as stunned as they had been at the beginning. Instead, they stared at her with lewd and vulgar gazes. She was just a girl from a brothel. Spending a bit of money would make her strip naked and lie on the bed waiting to be taken. A woman like this was not worthy of their respect. Woman, Yi Luo turned to look at Yun Luo Feng and licked his dry lips. Being my concubine is better than following Yi Ling. Even though your status is low and you can't obtain the status of a prince's consort, I can give you plenty of love. I guarantee that no one in this prince's residence will dare to bully you. How about it? Only he, the son of the empress, had the right to possess such a beautiful woman. Yi Ling was nothing. Yi Ling finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She clenched her fist tightly and swung it towards Yi Luo with an irresistible force. Bang! Just as Yi Ling's fist was about to reach Yi Luo, a pair of legs kicked towards Yi Luo at an even faster speed. The crowd only heard a muffled sound as his body was thrown out. The girl lifted her foot and stepped on Yi Ling's chest. She looked down at him from above. "I'm sorry, I didn't hear a single word you just said. Can you say it again?" Even though the white-robed young lady was apologizing, everyone could feel the threat from her body. There was a devilish smile on her face, and her black eyes were wild and arrogant. "Men, capture this woman for me." Yi Luo held his breath and roared angrily with an ashen face. No one in the crowd thought that the banquet had not even begun and the two parties were already fighting. A wave of orderly and powerful footsteps suddenly rang out, instantly surrounding Yun Luo Feng and Yi Ling. All the guards pulled out their weapons and the atmosphere was cold and solemn. Chapter 169. Yun Luo Feng glanced evilly at the guards who had gathered around them. The corners of his lips curled into an angle as he spoke insolently, "If you want him dead, then you can make your move. Of course, just the few of you aren't a match for me." Bang! As he spoke, Yun Luo Feng pressed his foot on Yi Luo's chest a little harder. Instantly, the sound of bones cracking rang in everyone's ears. "Ah!" Then, Yi Luo's mournful cry echoed through the air. It was heart-wrenching and made everyone's hair stand on end. You ambushed me." Yi Luo stared fixedly at Yun Luo Feng. A vicious light flashed in his eyes. "What kind of skill is that if you ambushed me? If you really have the ability, then fight me fairly." Yun Luo Feng swept his eyes over him. "The winner is king and the loser is in the wrong. This is an eternal truth. A loss is a loss. If this was on the battlefield, you would have no chance to retaliate. Yi Luo, the gap between you and Yi Ling is not small. Even if you obtain the throne in the end, your seat will not be stable." The crowd was stunned by the young girl's treasonous words. Her features were wild and her words were unruly. She did not even put the royal family in her eyes. But what right did she have to look down on the royal family? That's right, the noble disciples could feel the contempt in the young girl's eyes. This kind of contempt was as if the throne was placed in front of her and she would not even bother to look at it, but what they did not understand was that she was only an ordinary girl who had given herself to Yi Ling. What gave her the courage to say such words? "Yi Ling, let's go." Yun Luo Feng raised the corners of his lips and turned to face Yi Ling with a faint smile. "All right." Yi Ling was a little surprised but did not say anything else. He nodded and turned his gaze towards the guards surrounding them. He shouted coldly, "Get out of my way." The guards were stunned by Yi Ling's roar and subconsciously made way for her. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the two of them walked out of the courtyard without looking back. It was as if they had only come to say hello. Yi Luo only returned to his senses when the two of them had completely disappeared. He clenched his fists tightly and spat viciously, "Yi Ling, I will never let you go," outside the mansion. Yi Ling couldn't take it anymore and asked, "Mistress, why did you come to the second prince's residence? Are we just going to leave like this?" Yun Luo Feng smiled softly. "Since I've finished my business, I should naturally leave." Yi Ling suddenly froze. After a long while, he continued to ask, "But I've always been by your side, and I haven't seen you do anything else. Could it be that whenever you want to do something, you beat Yi Luo up?" He asked for it. Yun Luo Feng curled the corners of his lips. "I've come here to survey the terrain. Just a moment ago, I've finished surveying the second prince's residence. Since that's the case, there's no need for me to stay any longer." Yi Ling's eyes were filled with astonishment. "Master, when did you survey the terrain? How come I didn't know? I remember that you didn't go anywhere." Yun Luo Feng glanced at Yi Ling and said devilishly, "Yi Ling, you must remember, there are some things that you don't need your eyes to see. You need to use your mental energy. Just now, I have already spread my mental energy throughout the entire mansion. Therefore, every corner of the mansion and every room are imprinted in my mind. Do you understand? Chapter 170. Yiling trembled all over. To be able to cover the entire residence with his mental strength, how powerful did he have to be to do this? Master, I understand. He slowly took a deep breath, his eyes glinting. Let's go. I still have to go to the second prince's palace tonight. Now, I'll go back to my palace and rest. I'll save my energy for tonight's event. Yun Luofeng stretched his back lazily. His pitch-black eyes were filled with determination. No matter who killed her parents, they had to pay the price for it. Night fell. In the darkness of the night, an enraged roar rang out in the quiet residence, mixed with monstrous rage. Yiling, and that stinky girl, I'll make you wish you were dead. At that moment, whenever Yi Luo thought of the humiliation he had suffered over the past 100 days, his heart felt as if it were being gnawed at by 10,000 ants, and the pain was unbearable. Blue veins popped out on his tightly clenched fists, and his bulging eyes were bloodshot with rage. Imperial son, you'd better not be impatient. In a room filled with the scent of sandalwood, a graceful and beautiful woman sat on a chair. She held a cup of tea and sipped it lightly, a light flashing through her beautiful eyes. General Yi is Yiling's uncle. I'm afraid it won't be so easy to deal with Yiling. As for the little girl you're talking about, to be able to injure you, her strength is definitely not simple. This kind of woman must not be seen by your imperial father. Otherwise, with your imperial father's lustful nature, he will definitely fall for that little girl. Mother, I can't accept this. Yi Luo clenched his fists and said indignantly, that woman made me lose face in public, how can I let her off? If I don't complain to my imperial father, I really won't be able to quell my anger. Son, don't you know your imperial father's personality? Whether it's the late Empress Yi or me, we won your imperial father's favor because of our looks, and your imperial father likes the new and hates the old. Since that girl is so stunning, all the more we can't let your imperial father see her. If your imperial father takes a fancy to her, how many women in the world do you think would refuse to become the emperor's concubine? In Empress Rong's mind, the emperor was the supreme being, and there was no woman he couldn't have if he wanted her. Moreover, there was no woman who could refuse to become an emperor's concubine. Mother, then how should I take revenge? Am I really going to let this woman bully me like this? Yi Luo was very unwilling. Right now, he wanted nothing more than to tear Yiling into 1,000 pieces and then take that girl in white into his mansion and torture her to death. Imperial son, you must know that there are many cheap women in this world. When they see a man with power and influence, they want to cling to him, wishing that they could kneel down and lick his boots. Therefore, I have an idea. Recently, the imperial family has been trying to curry favor with the people of Luofeng Pavilion. Why don't we give her to the steward of Luofeng Pavilion as a concubine and use this opportunity to build a relationship with Luofeng Pavilion? When your father sees that we are trying to curry favor with the people of Luofeng Pavilion, he will definitely praise you even more. The position of crown prince will then belong to you. Empress Rong lowered her eyes and a cold glint flashed across them. The smile on her lips became sinister and terrifying as she spoke slowly. Isn't that letting her off too lightly? Yi Luo frowned. His imperial mother's actions were not to punish that woman for him, but to give her a chance to become a phoenix from a sparrow. Therefore, how could he accept this? Imperial son, the person I want to build a relationship with is the steward of Luofeng Pavilion, Wu Zhong. This Wu Zhong is over 50 years old and extremely perverted. Anyone who becomes his woman will be tortured to death by him. Moreover, Wu Zhong is lustful, he will definitely be interested in this woman. Chapter 171. Yi Luo was silent for a moment, then asked, "What if that woman doesn't agree to seduce the steward of the Windfall Pavilion?" Hearing this, Empress Rong sneered, her lips curling into a mocking smile. "My son, there is no woman in this world who doesn't want to curry favor with power. Now that the Windfall Pavilion's power is at its peak, even the imperial family has to be courteous to them. Come to think of it, she should thank us for giving her this opportunity. Otherwise, she wouldn't have had the chance to meet the steward of the Windfall Pavilion." Under the deep night sky, the young girl stood against the moonlight. Her clothes were as white as snow and stood out in the dark. However, the silence of the night was somewhat frightening. Only the cicadas in the trees could be heard. Yun Luofeng gazed deeply at the candlelit window, listening to the mother and son's discussion in the room. Her lips curled into a demonic smile and a cold light flashed in her eyes. Tonight, she had originally wanted to come to the second prince's residence to investigate the truth behind her parents' deaths. She didn't expect to hear the mother and son's plot. Moreover, the target of their plot was her. "Yi Ling, who is this Wu Zhong?" she asked with her back to the handsome youth behind her. Yi Ling was startled, then replied, "Wu Zhong is considered an old member of the Windfall Pavilion. He has been with us since the Windfall Pavilion was founded. His strength is at the advanced high spiritualist level, comparable to mine." "Yi Ling, pretend that you didn't hear anything today. Perhaps this is a very good test. I want to know if Wu Zhong is loyal to the Windfall Pavilion." "Yes, master," Yi Ling replied respectfully. In reality, even now, he was still shocked by Yun Luofeng's actions. Just when they had been spying on the second prince's residence, she had fed the patrolling guards something that had caused the guards to stare blankly, as if they hadn't noticed them at all. "It seems that we won't be able to find any more useful information tonight." Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow and slowly turned around. Her voice was demonic and languid. "Yi Ling, let's go back first. This subordinate understands." Yi Ling lowered her head and replied respectfully. The two of them had been standing outside the window for an hour, but no one had noticed their presence. Some patrolling guards walked past them without making a sound. If one looked closely, one could see that these guards' eyes were dull, like wooden puppets wandering in the night. Only when Yun Luofeng and Yi Ling left did the eyes of the guards recover their luster bit by bit. However, they seemed to not know that two uninvited guests had just arrived and continued patrolling as usual. Under the desolate curtain of the night, the streets were devoid of the hustle and bustle of the day. Instead, it was deep and serene. Suddenly, Milk Tea, who was originally in Yun Luofeng's sleeve, seemed to sense something and began to squeak. Its squeak was filled with anxiety and unease, as if warning Yun Luofeng that there was danger here. "Miss Yun." Suddenly, a few figures descended from the sky and landed in front of Yun Luofeng. They went straight to the point and said, "Our general invites you to make a trip." "General?" Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows as he looked at the people blocking their way and asked with an evil smile, "General Yi?" "That's right," the soldier replied coldly. "Our general is indeed General Yi." General Yi of Flowing Gold Nation had once been defeated at the hands of his old man, and as a result, his nephew had been reduced to a hostage. Now that General Yi had suddenly invited her, perhaps her identity had been exposed. Chapter 172. All right. Yun Luofeng stroked his chin, his eyes deep in thought. "I'll have to trouble you to lead the way." "I'll go with you." Yi Ling looked at the soldiers under the night sky and stood resolutely by Yun Luofeng's side. "Please. The soldier was still polite and made an affectionate gesture towards Yun Luofeng as he spoke in a grave and stern voice. General's residence. In the study, a middle-aged man stood with his hands clasped behind his back under the cold moonlight. His black hair was tied behind his back, as black as ink. His back was facing the door of the study, his figure straight and stern like a majestic mountain. Lord General. Suddenly, a voice pulled him back from his thoughts. The person you've invited is here, but the third prince has also come with her. When Ibufan heard the soldier's report, he finally turned around slowly and said with a stern expression, "Let them in." "Yes, Lord General." The soldier accepted the order and retreated. Not long after, a figure in snow-white robes appeared in his line of sight in the dark night sky. When he saw the girl striding in, Ibufan's stern eyes became absent-minded and he could not even shift his gaze away from the girl. Alike, too alike. This girl and her mother, Bai Ling, looked as if they had been carved from the same millstone. Both of them were exceedingly beautiful and peerless. Uncle. Yi Ling saw that her uncle was staring unblinkingly at Yun Luofeng and a trace of anxiety appeared on her face. She glanced at Yun Luofeng and heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that he was not angry. Ibufan gradually came back to his senses. He looked at Yun Luofeng with a strange look in his eyes. It was as if he was looking at someone through her. "I don't know if I should call you Miss Yun or Yun Luofeng." Ibufan's expression was stern, as if the absent-minded look earlier was just an illusion. "It's just a title, General Yi can call me anything you like." Yun Luofeng leaned against the door railing, her dark eyes gazing deeply at Ibufan. "But General Yi and I don't know each other. May I know why you've summoned me?" Ibufan pondered for a moment before he asked coldly, "I just want to know why you, the granddaughter of the Long Yuan nation's general, would come to the Flowing Gold nation. If you say you have no ulterior motives, I will not believe you." Hearing this, Yun Luofeng's eyes narrowed and a dangerous light flashed through them. Sure enough, this fellow knew her identity. And now, even if she wanted to deny it, it would only be superfluous. Furthermore, she had no intention of hiding her identity when she came here. She wanted everyone in the world to know that her goal was to avenge her parents. Looks like General Yi is really well informed. "I, Yun Luofeng, am just a good-for-nothing in Long Yuan nation, but you can actually see through my identity." Yun Luofeng crossed his arms over his chest, a sinister smile on his face. "That's right, I am Yun Luo's granddaughter, and also the daughter of Yun Yang and Bai Ling." It was like a sledgehammer that fiercely smashed onto Ibufan's heart, and it caused him to stagger slightly. She really was Bai Ling's daughter. In fact, ever since Yun Luofeng had entered the Flowing Gold nation for the first time, she had already caught Ibufan's attention. In addition, the people from the third prince's residence all called this young girl Miss Yun, so he had been able to determine her identity. Ibufan took a deep breath as he stared at the peerlessly beautiful face in front of him. He calmed the ripples in his heart and stared fixedly at her with his deep, black eyes. Chapter 173. Miss Yun, your parents and I have known each other for a long time. However, we have different masters and we can only meet on the battlefield. So, on account of my friendship with your parents, I advise you to leave the Flowing Gold country. I can forgive you for entering Flowing Gold nation, but if you don't leave, don't blame me for being impolite. Ibufan's tone was unusually firm and his handsome face was solemn. He was the general of Flowing Gold nation and protecting the country was his responsibility. Otherwise, he would not have resolutely met the woman he loved on the battlefield more than 10 years ago. Unfortunately, because he was against using schemes against Yun Yang and his wife, he was summoned back by His Majesty before the war was over. He was completely unaware of what happened next. When he finally found out, he heard that Yun Yang and his wife had both died on the battlefield and their souls had returned to their homeland. This grievous news was a huge blow to him, and he used it as an excuse to avoid waking up. Even now, his heart still ached. Leave Flowing Gold Nation. Yun Luofeng smiled devilishly. Do you think that since I've come here, I'll leave so easily? Yi Bufan's handsome face darkened. Miss Yun, as long as I'm guarding Flowing Gold Nation, I won't let you do anything to harm Flowing Gold Nation. Even if you're Bai Ling's daughter, I won't let you do as you please. Yun Luofeng glanced at him maliciously. I'm here to avenge my parents. No one can stop me. Yun Luofeng. Yi Bufan was slightly annoyed. When two countries fight, there are bound to be casualties. My Flowing Gold Nation has also lost many people on the battlefield. Do you want to avenge them all? When will there be an end to revenge? Furthermore, there are casualties in battle. These things are unavoidable. That's right. When two countries fight, there are bound to be casualties. Unfortunately, I don't care about the lives of the people in this world. I only care about my family. I don't care how they died, I only know that those who hurt my family are my enemies. Yun Luofeng laughed coldly. Her arrogant eyes were filled with dominance. When will there be an end to revenge? What a joke. She never knew how to repay evil with kindness. She only knew that blood must be paid with blood. Yi Bufan's brows furrowed tightly as anger appeared on his face. As if sensing their general's anger, the surrounding soldiers all drew their weapons, causing the atmosphere to suddenly become tense. Yun Luofeng, do you really insist on doing this? Yi Bufan raised a hand to stop the soldiers and asked coldly. Yun Luofeng didn't answer him, but instead asked a question with a faint smile. General Yi, do you like my mother? The girl's voice was devilishly and languid, as if she was asking something unimportant. But her words caused Yi Bufan's heart to clench fiercely. At this moment, the image of that peerlessly beautiful face that had a faint smile on her face had appeared once more in his mind. Do you know why my mother didn't choose you? Yun Luofeng smiled devilishly, because the person she loved was a man with unyielding character. Yun be like Yun. Luo, loyal man like other people. If my father was still alive, he would wash the imperial city in blood if anyone dared to touch my mother. He would rather give up his position as a junior general than allow anyone to touch her. Yi Bufan was deeply affected by the girl's words. He staggered and fell on the chair in a sorry state. At that very moment, this mighty general of Flowing Gold Nation had accidentally exposed all his thoughts for all to see. Chapter 174. Yi Ling, let's go. Yun Luofeng took one last look at the disheveled Yi Bufan before he turned and slowly walked towards the boundless night. Yi Ling, who had wanted to leave with Yun Luofeng, did not seem to be able to bear to see Yi Bufan in such a disheveled state. His footsteps paused slightly as he turned his back to the middle-aged man behind him and said, Uncle, seeing that you're my mother's elder brother, I'll tell you this as well. The Flowing Gold Nation's royal family has reached its end. Don't help the emperor kill anymore. After he had finished speaking, he did not spare another glance at the man behind him as he quickly chased after Yun Luofeng. Boss. Yi Bufan laid on a chair as a bitter smile hung on the corners of his lips. Bai Ling, you didn't choose me back then because I was too fair and strict. Yun Yang, on the other hand, is a hot-blooded man. Could it be that my loyalty to His Majesty was also a mistake? His handsome face was filled with pain as if he had sunk into a deep recollection. If I could relive my life, I would really like to be an ordinary person without any burdens. If that were the case, it wouldn't be impossible for me to fly into a rage for a beauty. Unfortunately, I was never meant to be hot-blooded. Bufan ordered someone to bring him some white wine and downed it in one gulp. All these years, every time he thought of that peerless beauty, he would need to rely on the numbing effects of alcohol to fall asleep. Young mistress, you're back. In the second prince's residence, the little girl, Qing Yan, saw Yun Luofeng return at first glance. Her crescent-shaped eyes lit up as she hurriedly went forward to greet her. She said with a smile, "Young mistress, you've been out for the whole night. You must be tired. I've already asked the kitchen staff to prepare a bowl of soup for you. Drink it before you go to sleep." "All right." Yun Luofeng walked into the room and a fragrant aroma filled the air. She walked towards the bowl of soup and sat in front of the table. She scooped up a spoonful of the fragrant soup and slowly brought it to her mouth. "Why is the meal this time different from the one at noon?" Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow. "This chef isn't bad. His cooking skills are even better than those in the general's mansion. Tomorrow, I'll mention this to Yiling and have her send this chef to me. The old man will definitely like it." Yun Luofeng didn't have any other hobbies, but he loved to eat. As such, all the chefs in the general's residence were hired by him at a high price. Yun Luofeng, who was used to eating the food in the general's residence, was not used to the flowing gold nation. He didn't expect that the third prince's residence would have such a skilled chef. Qing Yan looked at Yun Luofeng guiltily. "Miss, this isn't very good. After all, this chef is from Yiling's residence, why not?" Yun Luofeng finished his bowl of soup, then took the handkerchief that Qing Yan handed over and wiped the corner of his mouth. He stretched his body and stood up from his seat. "I will make this request to Yiling tomorrow. I'm tired now. Qing Yan, you can leave first." "Yes, miss, this servant will take her leave." Qing Yan hurriedly picked up the empty bowl and guiltily walked out. She was thinking about how to cover up this lie. In the courtyard, under the darkness of the night, a man dressed in a long black robe was hidden in the darkness. It was as if he had become one with the night. Qing Yan saw the grim man in the courtyard with one glance. After thinking for a moment, she walked over to him. "I've already followed your instructions and sent the soup to Mississippi. I didn't let her know that you were the one who made it for her." The man's tone was as grim as ever. It was as if besides Yun Luofeng, he wasn't willing to say another word to anyone else. "Give this to her." Chapter 175. Qing Yan was stunned. Her gaze fell upon the plate of grapes in the man's hand and she blinked in astonishment. "Even though Miss doesn't like the food in the third prince's residence, these grapes don't seem to be any different." "Why did you?" "Not the same." "Not the same. How so?" Qing Yan simply could not understand this man. Why does he have to be so mysterious every time? Besides, he has always been following Miss to protect her. Why doesn't he let Miss know? The man's face was expressionless and his voice was low. "I will continue to deliver tomorrow's food." Of course, those grapes were different. Yun Luofeng was very picky about food. For example, when she eats grapes, she must first remove the seeds. Hence, he had used his spiritual energy to remove the seeds from the grapes on the plate. However, he was not interested in explaining this to Qing Yan. Also, leave these grapes on her table. Don't disturb her rest. The man thought for a moment before he gave another order. His dark eyes looked at the flickering candlelight at the door. He then turned around resolutely and immediately disappeared into the night. Now, he should go and prepare her breakfast tomorrow. "Qing Yan, where did these grapes come from?" "Early morning." The morning light spilled into the room. The young girl was sitting at the table, her slender fingers gently tapping the surface of the table as she asked casually. "Ah. Qin Yan was stunned and replied guiltily, yes. I prepared them for you, Mississippi, is that so? Then how did you remove the seeds from the grapes? Yun Luofeng looked at the little girl's delicate and pretty face with a smile that did not reach her eyes as she continued to ask. What? The little girl cried out in shock, how could this be? Qin Yan was about to defend herself when she suddenly realized that she had let the cat out of the bag. She quickly shut her mouth and guiltily glanced at Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng raised her eyebrows. Her heart quickly caught onto something and a smile appeared on her beautiful face. Qin Yan, since when have you helped others lie to me? Is this how you feel about me, Qin Yan thought that Yun Luofeng was angry and felt somewhat anxious. She hurriedly explained, young lady, this servant did not intentionally deceive young lady. If someone else wanted to bribe this servant to harm young lady, this servant would definitely not betray young lady. This servant is just. She only felt that Yun Shao and young Miss's relationship was very good, so it was impossible for him to harm young Miss, so she helped him. Moreover, Yun Shao had seen that young Miss had no appetite for the past few days and he didn't want young Miss to know that he was tailing her. Hence, he had sought her out. If it was someone else, she wouldn't have bothered. Pfft, Yun Luofeng laughed out loud. She raised her hand to pinch Qin Yan's cheek and said with a smile, all right, I won't tease you anymore. Qin Yan, I naturally understand your sincerity towards me. I will pretend to be unaware of this matter. You can continue to contact him. Yun Shao had probably never thought that a plate of grapes would completely expose his whereabouts. Mississippi, Qin Yan bit her lips and stamped her feet in shame and indignation. The young miss was really getting naughtier and naughtier. She actually teased her, causing her to think that the young miss was really angry. The Empress has arrived, His Royal Highness the Second Prince has arrived. Just as Yun Luofeng stepped out of her room, a sharp voice suddenly fell into her ears. It caused her expression to sink and a murderous intent appeared in her black eyes. Chapter 176. This third prince is really outrageous. I personally came to see him but he didn't even come out to receive me. I really don't know how that dead Empress Yi raised her son. In the back garden, Empress Rong frowned slightly and her elegant face flashed with displeasure as she scoffed. But the third prince's residence was really rich. Look at the rocks, they were actually made from stones from the depths of the North Sea. The herbs in the flower beds were actually the extremely precious scarlet flame grass. Even the bamboo in the bamboo forest could not be bought without tens of millions of gold and silver. It seemed that the Yi family was not as simple as they appeared to be. They must have given the third prince an incalculable amount of gold and silver over the years. Otherwise, he would not have the ability to build such a luxurious residence. Greed flashed across Empress Rong's eyes as she stared fixedly at the treasures that could rival a nation's wealth. What she did not know was that the moment her greed was exposed, Yi Ling had already noticed it. Hee. A cold laugh sounded as if it came from the horizon, causing Empress Rong to hurriedly retract the greed in her eyes. She turned to look at the youth who had just stepped out of the study, her beautiful eyes filled with murderous intent. This damned brat, he's so lucky. I've already sent so many assassins but none of them managed to kill him. Unfortunately, no matter how lucky he was, he would still end up like his short-lived mother. Sooner or later, he would die in the Yellow Springs. Yi Ling, I've come to see you this time because I have a few matters to discuss with you. Empress Rong stared coldly at Yi Ling, the greed in her eyes exploding once again. I and His Majesty have owed you far too much over the years. To make up for our guilt, I've decided to have you exchange residences with Luo-er. Luo-er's residence is in the bustling city, much better than this remote place of yours. She said it was a discussion, but it was actually a forceful order. How could Yi Ling not sense Empress Rong's true intentions? The cold smile on his lips deepened as he replied indifferently, "Apologies, I prefer a quiet place." "I appreciate your Majesty's good intentions." Yi Ling. Empress Rong's expression darkened. "You really don't know what's good for you. I'm doing this to make up for what I owe you. Luo Er's residence is much better than this shabby place of yours." The meaning behind her words was that she did all this for the sake of Yi Ling, but it just so happened that this stinking brat Yi Ling didn't appreciate it. Hee, Yi Ling chuckled again and said mockingly, "If you want me to exchange my mansion with Yi Luo, it's not impossible. Everything in my mansion, even a blade of grass or a tree, I'll take it all." Empress Rong's expression changed completely. "Since this is an exchange of manners, then everything in the two manors will be included. I'm afraid it's very unreasonable for you to take these things away." Yi Ling smiled. His smile contained a bone-chilling coldness. His slightly raised eyes held a touch of arrogance. "Empress Rong, what difference is there between your actions and a bandit's? Aren't you just eyeing the treasures in my mansion and planning to rob them openly? Why do you have to make it sound so nice? How dare you?" Empress Rong shouted angrily. Her cold and elegant face flashed with viciousness. "You are a prince, and also a subject of the flowing gold kingdom. Do you think that I, the Empress, do not have this little bit of authority? I'm warning you, everything in the flowing gold kingdom belongs to the imperial court. The same goes for the treasures in your mansion. Since these belong to the imperial family, why can't I make the decision?" Chapter 177. Her meaning was very clear. All the treasures under the heavens belong to the empire. As the mother of the empire, she has the right to distribute these treasures. Hence, the treasures should belong to whoever she says they belong to. Yi Ling stared disdainfully at Empress Rong, who was acting like a bandit. "No one else can lay a finger on my things. Not even the members of the imperial family." Impudence. Yi Luo's handsome face filled with rage when he heard Yi Ling's mocking words. He glared fiercely at the handsome, fair youth before him. "Yi Ling, my imperial mother is the Empress of the Empire, a motherly model of the nation. Who gave you permission to speak to her in this manner? Since my imperial mother has said that this residence belongs to me, you'd better get out of my territory immediately. My place doesn't welcome a bastard like you." The word bastard made Yi Ling's breath sink. He narrowed his eyes and approached Yi Luo dangerously. "What did you just say?" "I said that you're a bastard." Slap. Yi Ling's hand was as fast as the wind. Before anyone could react, a slap flew towards Yi Luo's face. A clear and melodious sound rang through the entire residence and shocked Empress Rong. She never thought that Yi Ling would have the audacity to hit someone in front of her. You dare to hit me?" Yi Luo covered his swollen face as his eyes spat fire. "I'm going to tell Imperial Father to send you to the border. You little bastard, you little bastard. I hit you for Imperial Father's sake. Do you think that Imperial Father will send me away for this?" Yi Ling retracted his hand and wiped his face with a handkerchief as he sneered. "You're talking nonsense." Yi Luo could not help but swear and his face turned a bright red. This little bastard actually said that he had hit me for Imperial Father's sake. Such behavior was utterly shameless. "Don't forget, we share the same father. You've called me a little bastard, a little bastard. Isn't that the same as saying that I'm the son of a bastard? You're humiliating Imperial Father in front of me. Do you think that you deserve to be hit?" Yi Ling casually threw the handkerchief in his hand onto the ground and stared condescendingly at Yi Luo. Yi Luo became even more enraged. Just as he was about to defend himself, the stunned Empress Rong came back to her senses and slapped Yi Luo across the face. Luo, why did you have to call him a little bastard? If His Majesty hears about this, no one will be able to protect you. Empress Rong said anxiously. Yi Luo felt very wronged, but he knew that he had spoken without thinking. Hence, he shut his mouth and did not dare to say another word. Suddenly, a soft chuckle was heard. Even though the chuckle was extremely soft, it was still clearly heard by everyone. Everyone followed the voice, and in an instant, a snow-white dress appeared in their line of sight. She was slowly walking over, and behind her was a green-clothed maidservant. She was beautiful and charming. It's you. Yi Luo saw Yun Luofeng at first glance and a look of amazement flashed across his eyes. However, when he thought of what this young girl had done to him, his gaze suddenly darkened. She would never forget how this damned slut had humiliated her in front of everyone. Imperial Mother, she's the woman I've been talking about. Yi Luo took a deep breath and clenched his fists tightly as he spoke, enunciating each word clearly. Empress Rong was shocked. She turned to look at Yun Luofeng and a hint of jealousy flashed across her beautiful eyes. Chapter 178. No wonder my son could not forget this woman. She was so beautiful. If His Imperial Majesty were to see her, I'm afraid that there would be no place for me in the Imperial Palace. Miss, how should I address you? She remembered the purpose of her visit and no longer cared about fighting Yi Ling for the residence. Her beautiful eyes stared deeply at Yun Luofeng as a sense of contemplation appeared in her eyes. Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng glanced at her from the corner of his eye and spoke unhurriedly. Yun Luofeng, Empress Rong murmured softly as a light flashed in her eyes. She went straight to the point. My main purpose in coming here this time is to see you. Now, I only have one question for you. Do you wish to rise above all others? Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow, crossed her arms and asked with a smile that did not reach her eyes, what do you mean? I have an opportunity here that can help you rise above others. Empress Rong laughed icily. It all depends on whether you can grasp it. If you do, I can let bygones be bygones for hurting Luo. Oh. Yun Luofeng laughed softly and raised her eyebrows in a demonic manner. I wonder what kind of opportunity this is. Tell me about it. Empress Rong saw the young girl's expression and thought that there was a chance. Her heart leaped with joy and a trace of disdain flashed across her eyes. She had thought that such a beautiful woman would have great strength of character. Now, it seems that she was nothing more than that. She was no different from the women in the brothels. As long as you're willing to listen to me, I can give you to Steward Wu Zhong of Luofeng Pavilion. As long as you can form a relationship with him, your future will be peaceful. Empress Rong raised her chin arrogantly. Her cold and elegant features were filled with disdain as she stared straight at Yun Luofeng. It was as if she was certain that she would seize this opportunity. The little servant girl, Qing Yan, who was standing behind Yun Luofeng, was completely dumbfounded by his words. Did I hear wrongly? Is there something wrong with the Empress brain? She's actually giving the master of Luofeng Pavilion to a mere steward. She even said that this is an opportunity for her miss to rise above others. You mean the steward of Luofeng Pavilion? Yun Luofeng chuckled. I thought it would be someone important. So it's just a servant. Wasn't that right? In the eyes of the true pavilion master behind the scenes, wasn't Steward Wu Zhong just a servant? Unfortunately, Empress Rong would never have guessed that this peerless beauty was the boss of the Windfall Pavilion. If she knew all of this, she would definitely find a hole to hide in and never come out again. Servant. Empress Rong paused for a moment, then laughed abruptly. Miss Yun, could it be that you don't know the great name of Windfall Pavilion? In just half a year, the Windfall Pavilion's name has shaken the entire Flowing Gold Nation, and manager Wu Zhong is a high spiritualist. Even the imperial family's experts have to be courteous when they see him, so he's not a servant. You'd better be polite when you see him. In Empress Rong's eyes, Yun Luofeng must have been ignorant and inexperienced. He didn't know the great name of the Zephyr Pavilion, which was why he dared to boast so shamelessly. Now that she had revealed Wu Zhong's strength, she was sure that this young girl would be overjoyed and throw herself into her arms. At that time, she could use Yun Luofeng as a bridge to establish a relationship with Steward Wu Zhong. Chapter 179. What a pity! Under Empress Rong's determined gaze, Yun Luofeng shook his head. A servant will always be a servant. No matter how powerful he is, he can't escape being a servant. Empress Rong's complacent face froze. After a long while, she finally calmed the anger in her heart and sneered, "Little girl, I'm only giving you this opportunity out of kindness, but you don't know how to grasp it." "That's right, I admit that you're quite pretty, but do you think that you can rely on your looks to hook up with an important person? Which one of the women married by an important person isn't very powerful? That's why it's your good fortune that Steward Wu Zhong has taken a liking to you. Don't even think about seducing someone like the master of the Windfall Pavilion." After she finished speaking in one breath, her cold and elegant face lifted into a cold smile. "The master of the Windfall Pavilion is not someone you're worthy of." Even though no one knew the gender of this mysterious master of the Windfall Pavilion, everyone subconsciously thought that a person who could establish such an organization must be a domineering man. Some of the unmarried women even saw the master of the Windfall Pavilion as their dream lover. However, they didn't know that the master of the Windfall Pavilion was a woman. "My lady, is this person stupid?" Qing Yan couldn't help but blurt out. "If my lady is the master of the Windfall Pavilion, how could my lady seduce me? Impudent." Empress Rong's face darkened and she said coldly, "A little servant girl dares to interrupt. Guards, drag her away and beat her to death." "Yes, your majesty." Hearing this, the guards behind Empress Rong joined their fists and stared sharply at Qing Yan. Just as the guards were about to walk towards Qing Yan, a cold voice rang out, "I'd like to see who dares to touch Qing Yan." The handsome youth stepped forward and shielded Qing Yan behind him. He raised his chin arrogantly and stared expressionlessly at the guards, who were as cold as mountains. Qing Yan was his master's woman. How could he let this girl come to harm in his residence? Furthermore, this little girl was the woman he liked. The corners of Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile as she looked at Yi Ling's figure. However, when her gaze turned towards Empress Rong and her son, a murderous intent gradually flashed across her pitch-black eyes. "Yi Ling, you're disobeying my orders for a little girl." Empress Rong's chest trembled with rage. She had clearly heard this delicate and pretty little girl address Yun Luofeng as Mississippi. From this, it could be seen that she was only a servant girl who served others. Now, Yi Ling had actually disobeyed her for a little servant girl. "Humph," Yi Ling scoffed coldly and replied expressionlessly, "Qing Yan is not a servant girl, she is my imperial consort." It was like thunder. Aside from Yun Luofeng, everyone else was dumbfounded. The third Prince Yi Ling, who had such high standards, had actually taken a fancy to a little servant girl. What was so special about this little maidservant that she caught his eye? Qing Yan was stunned as well. Her clear eyes stared fixedly at Yi Ling, who was standing in front of her, and a faint blush appeared on her delicate and pretty face. Did he just say that she was his imperial consort? Suddenly, Qing Yan's eyes darkened as if she had remembered something. There was a bitter taste in her mouth. She was only a little servant girl. How could the Emperor of Flowing Gold Country allow Yi Ling to marry her? That was an unrealistic question. Empress Rong finally returned to her senses. Her expression changed unpredictably. You're saying that you want a servant girl to be your imperial consort. Is this fellow destroying his own future? If he really does this, the civil and military officials of Flowing Gold Country will never be able to protect him. After all, a little servant girl is not suitable for the position of Empress of the nation. Chapter 180. I've made up my mind. I want to marry Qin Yin. No one can stop me. Yi Ling raised his handsome face arrogantly and stared coldly at Empress Rong. His voice was bone-chilling, like a fierce winter wind. Empress Rong's beautiful eyes darted around. Since you insist on marrying a little servant girl, I won't force you. I will report this to His Majesty and let him handle it. Yi Ling, since you want to give up on the throne, then Luo will accept it on your behalf. His Majesty will never allow a servant girl to become the mother of the nation. Luo let's go. Empress Rong no longer hesitated and turned to walk out of the courtyard. Yi Luo was taken aback and hurriedly chased after her. He asked anxiously, Imperial Mother, are we just going to let this go? Don't worry, there are some things she can't decide herself. Empress Rong laughed coldly, Luo go make the arrangements. Imperial Mother is going to Zephyr Pavilion to see Steward Wu Zhong. But Imperial Mother, the third prince's residence. Yi Luo's eyes were filled with greed and reluctance. There were too many treasures in the third prince's residence. Wouldn't it be great if all of them belonged to him? How could Empress Rong not sense Yi Luo's intentions? Her red lips curled into a confident smile as she spoke slowly, Luo, when you become the emperor, what can you not have? When that time comes, all you need to do is say the word and Yi Ling will obediently offer all of his treasures to you. This is the benefit of power. The benefits of power were great. Empress Rong knew this very well. She liked the feeling of being in control of someone else's fate. I understand, Imperial Mother. Yi Luo's eyes brightened. He licked his dry lips and his treacherous eyes swept over the place, carving every blade of grass and tree of the third prince's residence into his mind. Every time he thought about how all of these precious treasures would belong to him in the future, he had the urge to throw his head back and laugh maniacally. Yi Ling, you've chosen a servant girl as your concubine. This means that you've already given up on the throne. Don't regret it. The day of my registration will be the day of your death. In the courtyard, Yi Ling stared at the retreating figures of the people from the palace, and a trace of coldness appeared in her eyes. Just as he was pondering, the young girl's lazy voice slowly sounded out by his ear. Yi Ling, remember what you said earlier. I'll leave Qin Yin in your care. Yi Ling was startled. He turned his head and met Yun Luofeng's pitch-black eyes. He gently pursed his thin lips and nodded firmly. Master, don't worry. I will protect her. With me around, no one can hurt her. No one can stop me from marrying her heart. As his thoughts had long been seen through by Yun Luofeng, Yi Ling no longer concealed the love in her heart. Her gentle gaze gradually turned towards Qin Yan. Qin Yan, will you marry me? Qin Yan's face instantly blushed and she clutched the corner of her robe shyly. I don't want to get married in the next few years. I still want to spend more time with you, Miss Qin Yan. Marrying Yi Ling doesn't mean that you can't work for me. Yun Luofeng chuckled. However, if you're not in such a hurry to get married, you can get engaged first. There's no harm in waiting a few years before you get married. Miss Qin Yan's head was almost buried in the dust. Even her voice was as soft as a mosquito's. The back of her ears were bright red and she was extremely shy. Chapter 181. Master's idea is a good one. Yi Ling looked gently at Qing Yan and said with a smile, "Qing Yan, you are the woman I want to find. I admire your strength, perseverance, loyalty and protectiveness. Besides, as long as I want to marry you, no one can stop me." He admired her character, but he had only developed feelings for this little girl after spending more than half a year with her. He was not a man who cared about family status. As long as he loved her, he would marry her even if she was a beggar. If he did not love her, it would be useless even if the emperor's daughter came. I'll listen to you, Mississippi." What she meant was that she agreed with their idea. But because she was too shy, she did not directly acknowledge Yi Ling. Yi Ling's heart leaped with joy and she knelt on one knee in front of Yun Luo Feng. "Master, I sincerely thank you. It's because of you that I was able to meet Qin Yan. From now on, I'll protect her with my life. Please don't worry, Master." Yun Luo Feng gently raised his hand. In an instant, a powerful force grabbed Yi Ling's body and pulled her up. Yi Ling looked at Yun Luo Feng in surprise. In reality, Yi Ling was similar to the others. She thought that Yun Luo Feng's medical skills were very strong, but his strength was not that great. In addition, Yun Luo Feng had never revealed his strength in the past half a year. Hence, she had no idea of Yun Luo Feng's strength. But now, under the young girl's power, he could not even exert a little bit of his strength. It was clear to see how strong this young girl was. Above a high spiritualist. An earth spiritualist. Whether it was Long Yuan country or Flowing Gold country, the most powerful people were only high spiritualists. If Yun Luo Feng really became an earth spiritualist, no one in several countries would be a match for her. "Yi Ling, I want you to stand by Qin Yan's side no matter what happens. Even if you have to become enemies with your loved ones, are you willing?" "I'm willing." Yi Ling said these 3 words resolutely. "All right, find a suitable time and I'll arrange a marriage for you." Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a demonic smile. This little girl, Qin Yan, has been by her side for a long time. She would definitely choose a good husband for her. It was obvious that the current Yi Ling fulfilled her requirements. Also, you need to be prepared. Empress Rong will not let you off so easily. More importantly, she will definitely go to Wuzhong. I want to see how Wuzhong will react. If it wasn't to test Wuzhong, she wouldn't have let Empress Rong leave unscathed just because she heard Empress Rong say she would be beaten to death. Murderous intent flashed across Yun Luofeng's eyes as she coldly laughed. Revenge is a dish best served cold. If Empress Rong really had something to do with the death of her parents, then she would definitely settle the scores with her. Windfall Pavilion. Empress Rong sat in the main hall with a cup of tea in her hand. She sipped it gracefully. "Steward Wuzhong, I came to visit because I have a gift for you." "What gift?" Wu Zhongtou only cared about the tea in his hand. From beginning to end, he did not even look at Empress Rong. His voice was cold and disdainful. The Windfall Pavilion had a very high status in the Flowing Gold country. As the steward of the Windfall Pavilion, Wu Zhong naturally had the right to look down on the Empress. Empress Rong's expression did not look too good, but she suppressed the displeasure in her heart in the end. She smiled gracefully. "It's like this. Some time ago, I accidentally met a beautiful girl. I also found out that this beautiful girl admires Steward Wuzhong. She especially asked me to come and plead on her behalf. She is willing to become Steward Wuzhong's concubine. All I need is for Steward Wuzhong to send someone from the Windfall Pavilion to fetch her." Chapter 182. Everyone knew that Steward Wuzhong had no hobbies other than beautiful women. This was the only way to please him. Sure enough, After hearing Empress Rong's words, Wu Zhong's eyes shone with a strange light and his brows were filled with great interest. Oh. He raised an eyebrow and looked excited. What does the girl look like? Do you have a portrait? Empress Rong smiled confidently. She raised her hand and clapped twice. Servants, bring out the portrait. Yes, Your Majesty. Hearing this, the two palace maids behind Empress Rong held a portrait in their hands and walked lightly towards Wu Zhong. Steward Wu Zhong, this is the portrait of the girl. If you like it, I will be the matchmaker and have her marry as a princess of the imperial family. Empress Rong smiled gracefully. She had her reasons for doing this. Since she wanted to build a good relationship with Wu Zhong, the imperial family had to step in and accept Yun Luofeng as their adopted daughter. Only then would it be beneficial to the imperial family. Wu Zhong slowly unrolled the portrait in his hand. When he saw the arrogant and haughty girl in white, his heart stopped beating and his eyes filled with awe. This painting was beautifully drawn, and even the arrogance between her brows could be seen on the scroll. Her snow-white dress fluttered in the wind, and her chin was slightly raised as she stared at the deep blue sky. The corners of her lips curled into a mocking smile, as if she didn't even put the heavens in her eyes. Not bad at all. I've lived for so many years but I've never seen such a beautiful girl. Wu Zhong closed the portrait and praised sincerely, Empress Rong, are you sure this girl is willing to marry me? Empress Rong smiled confidently. As soon as this girl heard of Steward Wu Zhong's name, she said that she wouldn't marry anyone but you. You can rest assured, Steward Wu Zhong. All you need to do is make some preparations and pick a day to marry her. Luofeng Pavilion was a powerful force. If the Luofeng Pavilion were to personally escort the girl would not be able to defy them. Empress, may I ask for this girl's name? Wu Zhong asked after a moment of silence. I don't know her name. I only know that her surname is Yun. Cloud. Wu Zhong was stunned. If he remembered correctly, the deputy pavilion master seemed to have mentioned that the real master behind the scenes of the Windfall Pavilion was also surnamed Yun. It couldn't be such a coincidence, right? As if amused by his own thoughts, Wu Zhong laughed and shook his head helplessly, denying the suspicion in his heart. Even though he had never seen his master's true appearance, he knew that a 14-year-old young girl did not have the ability to assume the position of the pavilion master of the Drifting Wind Pavilion. Therefore, it was impossible for this girl to be his master behind the scenes. Unfortunately, things did not go as he wished. Wu Zhong had never imagined that the master behind the Windfall Pavilion was really just a 14-year-old girl. By the time he found out, it was already too late for regrets. After Empress Rong took her leave, she didn't even have time to walk out of the Zephyr Pavilion when a petite figure suddenly entered her line of sight, causing her expression to instantly darken. Stop! Empress Rong snorted coldly. She turned her gloomy gaze towards the little servant girl who had been blocked by her and asked coldly, Why are you here? Qin Yan did not expect to see Empress Rong here. Her expression froze for a moment and a trace of surprise flashed across her clear eyes. Chapter 183. How dare you? Our Empress is asking you a question and you refuse to answer. The palace maid's expression changed when she saw the stunned Qin Yan. She stepped forward and scolded her loudly. Qin Yan returned to her senses and a disdainful smile appeared on her pretty and adorable face. Even the members of the imperial family can come here, why can't I? Impudence. The palace maid raised her chin and glanced at Qin Yan disdainfully. You're just a little servant girl and you dare to compare yourself to Her Majesty, the Empress. Our Majesty is the mother of the world and there's no place in this world that she can't go. Who do you think you are? What right do you have to compare yourself to Her Majesty? Furthermore, did your master not teach you that you need to kneel when you see the Empress? What does it mean to be a dog that relies on its master's power? This was vividly displayed by the palace maids. As fellow maidservants, they had always felt that they were a cut above others. Their words clearly showed that they had no regard for Qin Yan. I may be a maidservant, but I only serve one person. In this world, the only person who can make me kneel is my lady. Who do you think you are? I, Qin Yan, am a girl with a backbone. I will never yield to power. Qin Yan's flushed face was filled with determination. She raised her chin fearlessly and her clear eyes were like a clear spring, reflecting the ferocious look on her face. You. Empress Rong never thought that this little servant girl would dare to speak to her in such a manner. Her face turned red with anger and she pointed a finger angrily at Qin Yan's nose. Since you wish to become the third prince's consort, you can't be so unruly. Guards, bring this girl into the palace. I want to teach her how to respect her elders and how to be a daughter-in-law of the imperial family. Empress Rong gritted her teeth as she spoke. Her ferocious expression made it seem as if she could not wait to tear Qin Yan apart and devour her. Now, even a little servant girl dares to look down on her. If she does not set the rules, who in the flowing gold kingdom would dare to obey her orders from now on? Yes, your majesty. The palace maids rubbed their fists and walked towards Qin Yan. Their faces were extremely ferocious and their eyes shone with a sinister light. You want to teach me the rules? You don't have the right. Qin Yan sneered. As the saying goes, like master, like maid. In this half a year, Qin Yan didn't learn anything else, but she learned a bit of Yun Luofeng's arrogance. It was because she understood that she was the young Miss Servant Girl. No matter what, she could not embarrass the young miss, and she could not show weakness in front of the enemy. Bang! After the palace maids grabbed onto Qin Yan's arm, a wave of power leaked out from within Qin Yan's body, sending the palace maids flying in an instant and sending them crashing miserably to the ground. Empress Rong's expression froze. She never thought that Qin Yan, as a maidservant, would have a cultivation base. No wonder Yiling didn't treat her like an ordinary servant. Unfortunately, a maidservant was a maidservant. No matter what, she couldn't change her fate of serving others. Damned girl, if you want to be the third prince's consort, you have to get my permission first. This consort will enter the palace right now and explain this matter to His Majesty. This consort will make it so that you'll never be able to be with that brat Yi Ling for the rest of your life. Qin Yan looked disdainfully at the ashen-faced Empress Rong and said mockingly, I didn't say I wanted to be the third prince's wife. The person I like is Yi Ling, not the third prince. If Yi Ling is willing to be a prince, she will be his consort. If he is unwilling, she will only be his future wife. Chapter 184. Good, very good. Remember what you said. Empress Rong's eyes were dark. She turned towards the servants of the Windfall Pavilion and gritted her teeth, the security at your Windfall Pavilion is too lax. You've let just anyone in. If Steward Wu Zhong were to punish you, would you be able to bear the consequences? Your Majesty, I'm truly sorry. The servant was stopped by Empress Rong, but he did not get angry. Instead, he wore an appropriate smile on his face and looked apologetic. Empress Rong's face lit up with pride. She was just about to order the servants to throw Qin Yan out when the servant suddenly changed his tone and continued, You're right. You're right. Our Windfall Pavilion isn't a place where just anyone can enter. Please leave, Your Majesty. Empress Rong's face froze. She widened her beautiful eyes and pointed a fair finger at the servant of the Windfall Pavilion. She asked in disbelief, What did you just say? Your Majesty, this is Windfall Pavilion's territory. If your majesty causes trouble here, I'll have someone escort you out. The servant bowed slightly and replied in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Aren't you afraid that I'll complain to Steward Wuzhong? Empress Rong gritted her teeth and roared angrily. The servant's eyes flashed with disdain when he heard this. I just don't want anyone to sully Windfall Pavilion's territory. I have no other intentions. If your majesty thinks that Steward Wuzhong will punish me for this, then I'll just have to admit that I'm unlucky. You're all very good. Empress Rong's eyes darkened. Her gaze swept across the servant like a knife and landed on Qin Yan. Just you wait for today's matter. I will not let this matter rest. This was Windfall Pavilion's territory after all. She did not dare to act rashly. Furthermore, the servant was helping this little slut so much. Perhaps they had an affair. Once she has gained Wuzhong's trust, she would settle the score with them. Let's go. Empress Rong's voice sank at the thought and she ordered icily. Yes, your majesty. The palace maids responded respectfully. They could not understand why Empress Rong, the mother of the nation, would want to curry favor with the servants of Windfall Pavilion. He didn't even dare to act rashly in front of a mere servant. Miss Qin Yan. The servant did not even look at the furious Empress Rong. He turned to face Qin Yan and greeted her respectfully. What's your name? Qin Yan raised her eyebrows and looked at the person before her as she asked. I'm Fong Yu. Does Miss Qin Yan have anything else to say? Fong Yu's voice was neither servile nor overbearing, but it was clearly more respectful than when he was in front of Empress Rong. Although he did not know Qin Yan's true identity, he had often seen Qin Yan by the Vice Pavilion Master's side during the past 6 months. Especially the way they interacted, it was as if they were friends. Because of this, many people in the Windfall Pavilion guessed that Qin Yan might be the same as the Vice Pavilion Master. They were both people by the Pavilion Master's side. That was why she was able to obtain the Vice Pavilion Master's respect and trust. You did very well just now. Qin Yan nodded her chin in satisfaction. There are very few people like you who can handle things like this. I will report to the Pavilion Master later and let you be promoted. Qin Yan was referring to the Pavilion Master, not the Vice Pavilion Master. Fong Yu was a little dumbfounded when he heard this. He raised his eyebrows in astonishment and stared in the direction where Qin Yan had left. His eyes were filled with deep shock. As expected, Miss Qin Yan really is one of the Pavilion Master's people. As soon as he thought about his promotion, Fong Yu became very excited. Chapter 185. Shao, so you're here. You've certainly made it difficult for me to find you. The woman in red slowly walked towards the man in front of her amidst the dark clouds in the forest. Her eyes were filled with gentleness and yearning. The man's grim figure was clearly reflected in her beautiful eyes. The man's face was covered by an ice-cold mask and his body exuded a grim aura that no one could approach. This aura forced the woman in red to stop in her tracks. However, a gentle smile still hung on her face. During this period of time, 2 forces have been looking for you. One is the eldest lady of the Spirit Order and the other is the Shao family. Even though they haven't mentioned your name, I know that the person they're looking for is you. Yun Shao gently pursed his light red lips as if he had not heard the woman in red's words. His grim gaze continued to stare at an empty spot not too far away from him. I'm afraid that no one knows better than you why the eldest lady of the Spirit Order is looking for you. The woman in red covered her lips and smiled tenderly. Her beautiful eyes swirled and rippled with light. Who asked you to be so mesmerizing? Even with a mask on, you can attract countless women. If you were to remove your mask, who knows how many people would go crazy for you. Unfortunately, this man was far too grim. His black eyes never wavered in the slightest. I really don't know if there's anything in this world that could move him. As for the Xiao family. The woman in red noticed that Yun Xiao had ignored her, but she was not angered. She continued to smile and said, I've heard that the Xiao family once had a good-for-nothing young master who was chased out of the Xiao family when he was 7 years old. Since then, there has been no news of him. I wonder what's your relationship with that young master of the Xiao family? Her words carried a sense of probing as her beautiful eyes glanced towards Yun Xiao. What disappointed her was that this man remained unmoved, as if what she had just said was an unimportant matter. If Yun Luofeng was here, he would certainly be able to guess that the young master of the Xiao family who had been chased out of the family was Yun Xiao. There was no other reason than that Yun Xiao's physique was the illusory spirit body. People who possessed this kind of physique would not be able to cultivate before the age of 10 and would only advance by leaps and bounds after the age of 10. Hence, a large family like the Xiao family could not tolerate the existence of trash and would very likely chase him out of the family. Xiao, the woman in red, pursed her red lips as a strange light flashed across her beautiful eyes. The Xiao family doesn't seem to know about your true identity. I understand that you don't want the snobbish Xiao family to know about your current strength. If you're willing to let me stay by your side, I'll help you keep your secret. What do you think? Her eyes were filled with infatuation. I don't want to be your wife. I just want to be by your side and risk my life for you. There was finally a slight change in Yun Zhao's gaze. His grim gaze slowly turned towards the red-robed woman's beautiful face as he spoke expressionlessly. There is another type of person who can keep a secret. That is, a dead person. The red-robed woman's expression changed abruptly as she bit her lips tightly. Xiao, you. My name is Yun Xiao. The man's aura spread out and covered the sky as he charged towards the red-robed woman. His gaze was as cold as a hawk's as he spoke expressionlessly. You have no right to call me Xiao. Hee, the red-robed woman laughed bitterly. Under the man's aura, her body felt as if it was being crushed by a great mountain and she was unable to move. Everyone says that the Ghost Emperor is cold and heartless, especially towards women. He does not have any tender feelings for the fairer sex. Now that I've seen it, it seems to be true. Yun Zhao's voice was low and hoarse as he stared coldly at the red-robed woman. I, Yun Xiao, will only have tender feelings for one woman in this life. But that person is not you. Chapter 186. I, Yun Xiao, will only take pity on one woman in this life. But that person is not you. The man's cold and merciless words completely hurt the woman in red, causing her face to turn incomparably pale. Suddenly, she was envious of the woman the Ghost Emperor had mentioned. What kind of peerless beauty could make this man take pity on her? I really want to meet that lady, so that I can understand why I've lost. Her beautiful face lit up with a bitter smile. The bitterness in her heart had long spread and her eyes were filled with pain. And if my guess is correct, that lady is Long Yuan country's famous good-for-nothing, Yun Luofeng. As soon as Yun Luofeng's name was mentioned, she could clearly feel the man's increasingly cold aura. This aura was like a sharp long sword, causing her heart to instantly bleed. Thinking of the news she had received during this period of time, the woman in red bit her lip and raised her beautiful eyes to stare straight at Yun Xiao. Someone as honorable as you, why would you willingly become a guard for a woman? Could it be that you've lowered yourself just so that she would approve of you? The man gently pursed his thin lips and his grim gaze swept icily towards the woman in red. Then, he finally took a step forward and slowly walked towards the woman in red. With every step that the man took, the woman in red found it difficult to breathe. It was as if a hand was fiercely squeezing her heart, making it hard for her to breathe. You don't deserve to know the reason. You don't deserve to know. Hee. The woman in red laughed self-deprecatingly. This man is always so heartless. His every word and action was like a sharp thorn, piercing fiercely into her heart, causing her already battered heart to become even more fragmented. Shao, you want to kill me? Upon sensing the man's murderous intent, the woman in red's body trembled. Her beautiful eyes stared at the man who was walking towards her, her face turning increasingly pale. You know too many things. The man's words were concise and comprehensive as usual, unwilling to say anything unimportant. What? The woman in red clearly did not understand Yun Zhao's meaning and was slightly taken aback. You know of her existence. The man glanced coldly at the woman in red and the murderous aura on his body intensified. I won't let any danger stay by her side. In other words, since this woman had been pestering him endlessly and knew of Yun Luofeng's existence, he would not allow such a danger to exist no matter what. No! The woman in red screamed as she stumbled back. Her face was drained of all color as she stared at Yun Zhao with a heartbroken gaze. I was only curious about what kind of woman she was. I had no intention of hurting her. You can't do this to me. Yun Zhao had already walked in front of the red-clothed woman and there was no longer any path of retreat behind the woman. Her tightly bitten lips were no longer as rosy as they were at the beginning, but had turned pale. I won't use her to test you. I will only nip all dangers in the bud. He didn't dare to take the risk, and he didn't dare to gamble on whether or not this woman wanted to take revenge on Yun Luofeng. Because the consequences of losing the gamble was not something he could bear. Bang! The woman's legs went soft, and she fell to the ground. Her hands gripped the ground beneath her tightly, and her sharp nails dug deep into the soil as she grabbed a handful of soil. She knew that Yun Zhao was speaking the truth. Even though she had no intention of killing Yun Luofeng now, she could not be sure if she would be able to maintain a calm heart when she actually sees Yun Luofeng. Chapter 187. It was likely that anyone who faced a love rival would find it difficult to do so. Yun Zhao, I can't have you in this lifetime, but if I were to die in your hands, it would be a form of release for me. The woman in red gently closed her eyes and the corners of her lips curled into a faint smile. Yun Luofeng, you really make one extremely envious. Even though you're just a good-for-nothing and have a lowly status, you're the only soft spot in this cold and heartless man's heart. In order to prevent you from being hurt, he did not hesitate to nip all dangers in the bud. I don't know what fucking luck you had in your past life to be able to obtain such an outstanding man. Tui. Suddenly, a wave of energy entered from the top of her head and even her body was pushed open. She slowly opened her eyes and gazed at the man in front of her with deep affection and longing, carving his figure deeply into her mind. Yun Zhao, if it wasn't for Yun Luofeng, would you have allowed me to stay by your side? She stubbornly wanted to know the answer, even though she clearly knew the other party's choice. The man did not reply to her. Perhaps to him, saying another word to her was a waste of breath. He naturally had an answer in his heart and there was no need to say it to an unimportant person. Yun Zhao, I don't regret knowing you. The woman in red smiled bitterly. Even if she was given another chance, she would still fall in love with this man. However, she would not be as impulsive as she was today, because the result of her impulsiveness was not to obtain him but to lose her life here. Tui. A muffled sound suddenly rang out. Immediately after, the woman in red's body seemed to have been poked with countless holes. Blood flowed continuously from those holes and at the same time, her body was like a deflated balloon, gradually shriveling up. Master. Qin Yuan appeared behind Yun Zhao and looked coldly at the woman in red who was gradually falling to the ground. There was no trace of sympathy or pity in his eyes. Just as Master had said, if this woman was not killed, she would definitely cause countless troubles. She would also cause trouble for Miss Yun. However, it was obvious that Miss Yun was Master's reverse scale. How could Master allow anyone who could threaten her to exist? He would only nip all dangers in the bud. He would never give it the chance to sprout. How are we going to deal with the Shao family? Qin Yuan frowned. This woman is right. Recently, the Shao family has indeed been searching for Master. It's just that they don't know about Master's current achievements. Otherwise, the Shao family would definitely kneel down and apologize. Yun Shao gently lowered his eyes, the face under the mask was cold and callous. His hands were clasped behind his back from start to finish, his ramrod straight figure standing amidst the mountain wind, the corners of his pale red lips seemed to curl into a mocking smile. But this smile disappeared so quickly that Qin Yuan thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. His master, who had always been expressionless, could actually have other expressions. How is Gao Ling? Yun Zhao's black eyes slowly turned towards Qin Yuan and he asked coldly. Ah. Qin Yuan was stunned, he did not expect Yun Zhao to ask about Gao Ling's condition at this time. After a moment of silence, he replied, living a life worse than death. That's right, Gao Ling's life was worse than death. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't have the courage to commit suicide, perhaps he would have already died. Compared to the physical pain he was suffering, the psychological trauma he had suffered over the past few days was the most torturous. Especially the humiliation he had received from his benefactors, he wanted nothing more than to hack them into 1,000 pieces. Chapter 188. Continue. Yun Zhao threw this sentence at him and walked out of the forest, leaving a dumbfounded Qin Yuan behind. Continue. What does that mean? Could it be that Gao Ling has offended Master in some way? No, I must inform Chun Yang and make her punish Yun Zhao even more severely. Gao Ling probably did not expect Yun Zhao's casual words to cause him to suffer unimaginable torment. From then on, all the guests he had received had changed from normal people to a bunch of perverts. In the days that followed, he finally understood what cruelty was. His experience in the bamboo building has become an eternal nightmare in his heart. By the Emperor's orders, His Royal Highness, the third prince, is to bring Miss Yun to the palace to see the Emperor. She is to be bestowed upon by the Emperor. The tranquility of the third prince's residence was broken by this sharp voice. Yun Luofeng, who was sitting in the pavilion, slightly raised her eyebrows. A smile flashed in her demonic and charming black eyes. She lazily got up and turned her head to look at the little servant girl, Qin Yan, beside her. She asked, Qin Yan, do you want to come with me to see your in-laws? Qin Yan was shocked and raised her head to look at Yun Luofeng. When she saw Yun Luofeng's mocking smile, she realized that she was teasing her. She stomped her foot angrily and said, My lady, you're teasing me again. The imperial family will never accept me. However, if my lady wishes to enter the palace, I will follow you. Let's go. Yun Luofeng shrugged her shoulders and a strange light flashed across her dark eyes. She smiled soundlessly. I want to know what choice Wu Zhong has made. Qin Yan nodded seriously, My lady, I met Empress Rong when I went to Zephyr Pavilion today. She must have gone for Steward Wu Zhong. If Wu Zhong is truly disloyal, he is not fit to serve you, my lady. Yun Luofeng curled the corners of her lips and walked out of the courtyard. She raised her head to look at the azure sky and the demonic smile in her eyes became even more pronounced. Was she not here to meet the Emperor of Flowing Gold Country? This was because only by meeting that man would she be able to clearly understand who had killed her parents back then. Therefore, no matter how big of a move she made, there was only one goal, and that was to enter the palace. All the civil and military officials were gathered in the majestic main hall of the imperial palace. As their leader, General Yi had a worried look on his face as he glanced at Yun Luofeng from time to time. To him, Yun Luofeng's identity must have been discovered by His Majesty. That's why His Majesty summoned her. If that's the case, then her life will be in danger. My beloved subjects, I have summoned you here to make an announcement. On the high seat was a bright yellow dragon robe, but it did not set off the man's imposing manner. His face was a little pale, and it was obvious that it was because he had overindulged in lust. His foundation was obviously weak, and this was the result of indulging in lust. Although the Emperor of Long Yuan country was a fatuous ruler, he was only overly biased towards the Mu family. However, the Emperor of Flowing Gold country, Director Yi, was a fatuous and tyrannical man. All day long, he only knew how to fool around with the beauties in his harem and paid no attention to court affairs. Director Yi coughed lightly, and a dignified look appeared on his pale face. Yesterday, Empress Rong went to the third prince's residence and met this Miss Yun. She hit it off with her at first sight and is willing to adopt her as her daughter. Hence, I have summoned all my beloved subjects here to make this announcement. Since the steward of Zephyr Pavilion had taken a liking to this woman, he had to win her over to the Imperial Palace no matter what. Only then could the Imperial Palace benefit greatly. Chapter 189. The officials were in an uproar. All the officials looked at each other in dismay, their eyes full of surprise. Some of them even sized up Yun Luofeng, as if they were wondering what on earth this girl was capable of to make Empress Rong admire her so much. This official objects. Under Director Ye's dissatisfied gaze, Yi Bufan slowly stepped forward and lowered his head. Your Majesty, if Empress Rong wants to adopt her as her daughter, then she will be the princess of Flowing Gold country. This is too rash, this official disagrees. He had received news that Empress Rong had left the third prince's residence in a huff, so how could they hit it off? Thus, no matter what they were planning, he would never agree to this. Humph. Director Yi snorted coldly. General Yi, I have already decided on this matter, so you don't have to say anything more. There's no time like the present. Today, I will adopt this daughter and add her name to the family tree. From beginning to end, Director Yi had never asked for Yun Luofeng's opinion. In his opinion, Yun Luofeng's opinion wasn't very important. As the emperor, wouldn't it be a piece of cake for her to accept a daughter as her foster daughter? But, Director Yi narrowed his eyes slightly as he looked at the girl's beautiful and exquisite face. He had the urge to take her into his harem. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to hook up with Luofeng Pavilion, he wouldn't have been willing to give away such a peerless beauty. Your Majesty. Please reconsider, said Yi Bufan in a serious tone. Shut up. Director Yi flew into a rage and slammed his palm on the table. General Yi, you're too long-winded. Once I've decided on something, I will never change my mind. Yi Bufan shook his head helplessly and smiled bitterly. His Majesty would never listen to good advice. Just then, a demonic and lazy voice suddenly rang out, making the atmosphere in the main hall even more tense. Every word and action of yours is about to decide my fate, but have you ever asked for my opinion? Director Yi couldn't help frowning as he turned to look at the girl in white in the main hall. Becoming my daughter will only bring you benefits and absolutely no harm. If you don't have the title of Imperial Princess, do you think Luofeng Pavilion will marry you? Even though Director Yi was an emperor and had an arrogant temperament, he was well aware of the Windfall Pavilion's strength. This was especially so for Steward Wu Zhong. When he first joined the Windfall Pavilion, his name had already spread throughout the Flowing Gold Nation. Steward Wu Zhong had originally wanted to pay a heavy price to recruit him, but who would have thought that he would choose the Windfall Pavilion in the end? Wu Zhong agreed. Yiling's eyes darkened, and a trace of coldness flashed across her eyes. He did not reveal his identity in the Windfall Pavilion and even used the name Yiling to become the deputy pavilion master. However, everyone in the Windfall Pavilion could tell that he did not have a good impression of the imperial family. Wu Zhong actually agreed to Empress Rong's request. This action was clearly provoking him. Impudent. Chairman Ye's eyes turned cold as he reprimanded, "Unfilial son, who allowed you to interrupt without my permission? As a hostage of the Long Yuan nation, you sneaked back to your country. I have already sent someone to inform the Long Yuan nation. In a few days, you will leave with the people from the Long Yuan nation." He would never allow Yiling to return. Who knew if Yiling's escape would lead to another war between the two countries? Hearing Chairman Ye's words, Yiling's heart gradually turned cold. They were both his sons, but the difference between them was not small at all. She really didn't know what else was there for him to miss in a place like this. Chapter 190. Little did they know that Chairman Ye's words also hurt the hearts of the civil and military officials. Yi Bufan looked at Yiling with heartache and shook his head. A bitter smile hung on his face. For the first time, he regretted persevering for such an emperor. "Can you see it clearly?" Yun Luofeng walked to Yiling's side, his lips curling into an evil smile. These so-called relatives. Since ancient times, the royal family was heartless. In a family like this, how could there be true father-son love? Yiling laughed mockingly. "Ever since a few years ago, when he wanted to sue for peace, he sent me to Long Yuan country as a hostage. From then on, I've seen through him." Chairman Ye's face darkened. "Unfilial son, as a prince of our country, you should contribute to our country. But you, not only did you escape back to your country, you even wanted to marry a servant girl. You're simply a disgrace to the royal family. Since that's the case, you should go to Long Yuan country and spend the rest of your life there, dying of old age. Guards, arrest him and throw him in jail until the people from the Long Yuan nation arrive. As you command." The guards cupped their fists and walked coldly toward Yiling, quickly surrounding the few people in the hall. Yun Luofeng crossed her arms in front of her chest, exuding a demonic aura. Her black eyes were incomparably dark and contained an evil smile. "I'm afraid you won't have the chance to put Yiling in jail." As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of music could be heard from outside the hall. Then, several maidservants carrying a bridal sedan slowly descended from the sky. At the very front of the sedan was a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was already over 50 years old, but because he had taken good care of his body, his face was glowing with health. He stroked his black beard and walked into the main hall with satisfaction. "Empress Rong once said that her newly adopted daughter adores me. Now, I can't wait to marry her. I wonder if my wife is here." Wu Zhong laughed heartily as he walked in. As soon as he stepped into the main hall, he noticed a stunning young girl dressed in a snow-white dress. His narrowed eyes showed an undisguised sense of amazement. Right after Wu Zhong finished admiring the young woman's peerlessly beautiful face, he accidentally caught a glimpse of Yiling, who stood by the young woman's side, and his face instantly stiffened while his gaze was filled with surprise. "Deputy Pavilion Master. Why is he here?" Moreover, he was surrounded by the imperial guards. Wu Zhong, who did not know what was going on, stopped in his tracks. No one knew what he was thinking. However, Chairman Yi did not notice the strange expression on his face. He smiled and said, "She is my newly adopted daughter. This time, she will represent the flowing gold nation in marriage with your Windfall Pavilion. Are you satisfied with her, Steward Wu Zhong?" He seemed to have forgotten about Yun Luofeng's rejection and directly arranged her fate. At this moment, Yi Bufan finally understood why Empress Rong wanted to adopt her as her daughter. It turned out that Empress Roan wanted to use her to curry favor with the Windfall Pavilion. This matter was truly disappointing to him. Under everyone's gazes, Yi Ling's gaze slowly shifted towards Wu Zhong. His handsome face was covered in indifference as the corners of his mouth curled into a disdainful arc. I never imagined that I would really see you here. You've really disappointed me. Unfilial son. Chairman Ye's expression changed as he angrily rebuked, "How dare you speak to someone from the Windfall Pavilion like that? Kneel down and apologize." The Windfall Pavilion's potential was extremely great, and even that lord thought highly of the Windfall Pavilion. If it was not for that lord's orders, he would not have used this method to curry favor with the Windfall Pavilion. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.